and get started, notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, October 9, 2018, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of this meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, October 4th, 2018, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can we have a roll call?
Lynn Benner.
Here.
Michael Beelan. Ken Diamond.
Here.
Randy Galligan.
Here.
Robert Garrison.
Here.
Gretchen Olig.
Here.
Peggy Astor.
Here.
Charles Ostroff.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here. Charles, can you lead us in flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to start our announcements from the evening from the podium. Tonight we have the honor of recognizing 4 Westfield High School seniors who have been named semifinalists in the 2019 National Merit Scholarship Program. The National Merit Scholarship Program used the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test to screen more than 1.6 million juniors in about 22,000 high schools across the United States. A nationwide pool of about 16,000 semifinalists emerged, representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors. They are the highest scoring entrants and are eligible to apply for National Merit Scholarships. So I want to thank you, first of all, for letting us recognize you and your amazing accomplishments tonight. And when I call your name, if you could come to the podium to accept a certificate, and congratulations specifically from the Board of Education. So first, Austin Chen. Yes, I'm going to make you stay. So. Congratulations. Madeline Reinders. Edward Shing. And Zachary Youssef. So people want to get lots of pictures, so I'm going to have you guys hang out for a few minutes. You want to drape us around here? Yeah. Here, please. Hold your certificate. Oh. All right. Oh, are you? Oh, I thought maybe you were climbing up on a chair to take a picture, which would be a lot, but you know. Thank you guys very much. Congratulations. All right, let's continue with the other announcements. Kent, do you have any announcements tonight?
I do. Congratulations to the Westfield High School boys soccer team on its 3-1 victory over Cranford on September 29th for the program's 700th win. We salute all of our players and coaches whose records contributed to this amazing achievement, including current coaches and previous coaches going back 55 years. They are Eric Shaw, Dave Shapiro, George Kapner, Walt Leonow, Jim Gagan, Bob Adrians, and Bjorn Thomason. Congratulations.
Amy.
Yep. The effects of special needs on the family will be the topic at the next meeting of the Parent-Teacher Council's Special Education Committee on Wednesday, October 17th at 7:30 p.m. at the Lincoln Early Childhood Center at 728 Westfield Avenue. Please note this change of venue. Their meetings are normally at Edison, but this one they're expecting a bigger crowd for, so it'll be at Lincoln School. Licensed clinical social workers Meredith Strauss and Gina Totino of Light Street Psychotherapy will discuss strategies to proactively support family values, connection, and resiliency.
Thanks, Rob.
Yes. Congratulations to the following Westfield High School students who achieved perfect scores on the September 2018 ACT. Valerie Chang, 11th grade, Science and STEM. Kurt Hugh, 11th grade, Science, STEM, English, and Reading. Alexander McGrail, 12th grade, Reading. Timothy Miller, 12th grade, Science. Jacob Singman, 12th grade, Math, STEM, and Reading. And Andrew Zanfangna, 12th grade, Math and STEM.
Thank you. Lynn, do you have any announcements?
Yes. The Friends of Westfield Memorial Library will be holding its annual children's and teen book sale between October 31st and November 3rd. Donations are accepted October 28th through the 30th. For information or to volunteer, contact wmlchildrensbooksale@gmail.com. I also have a second one. Adams Fest, a townwide celebration of Westfield native Charles Adams, will be held October 26th through the 28th, with a few early October events to help Westfield residents get into the spirit of the celebration. The main event kicks off on October 26th with Morticia and Gomez's Masquerade Ball at the James Ward Mansion. For a full schedule of events, complete details, and ticketing information, please visit www.adamsfest.com.
Thanks, Charles.
Yes. On Thursday, October 18th, parents are invited to attend a workshop hosted by Imagine entitled Fostering Resilience in Children Coping with Loss. The workshop will be held from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at 244 Sheffield Street in Mountainside. Please RSVP by Monday, October 15th by calling 908-264-3100 or emailing connie@imaginenj.org.
Thanks, Brendan.
Yep. The Rotary Club of Westfield will hold a used bike and sewing machine drive this Saturday, October 13th, from 9 a.m. to noon at the Board of Education building at the intersection of Elm and Walnut Streets. The adult and kids' bikes and sewing machines will be sent to developing countries in Latin America, Africa, and Eastern Europe. A $10 donation for each bike or sewing machine is requested to assist with shipping.
Thanks. Peggy.
Yes, I have a reminder that the Board of Education Candidates Night, sponsored by the Parent Teacher Council, PTC, is scheduled for Wednesday, October 24th in the Westfield High School Auditorium from 7:30 to 9 p.m. The three individuals who will be elected in November will each serve a 3-year term from 2019 to 2022. The following Westfield residents have declared their candidacy for 3 seats on the Board of Education: Dennis Coriello, Simon Sarasa, Robert Garrison, Gretchen Oleg, Tara Aporto, and Charles Ostroff.
Thank you. Our next Board of Education meeting is going to be held on Tuesday, October 30th at 7:30 p.m., 302 Elm Street, and the complete agenda will be available on Friday, October 26th on the board section of the district website. So before we move into the superintendent's report, I would recognize anyone from the public for agenda items only, although I would ask if those of you who are here to talk about Keller Field could wait until that item comes up on the agenda, and then we'll be happy to hear from you some more on that issue. Is there anyone from the public here on any other agenda items? Okay, seeing no one come to the podium, we'll move into the superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Dr. Dolan.
Thank you. So in the fall, the State Department, the New Jersey State Department of Education has the requirement for a number of state reports that have to be shared with the public. And so on this agenda, there are 4 of those such reports. I will be presenting the first 3, and then Mr. Panera, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum, will be presenting the 4th one. So the first state report that's required is to report on district efforts regarding the Week of Respect. We like to call it the Week of Extra Respect because we do expect everyone within the Westfield Public Schools comports themselves with respect. So during the week of Extra Respect, which was last week, we had a number of events that took place across all 10 of our schools, across our students from ages 4 up through our seniors. So respect, we try to emphasize at every level. We're talking about respect for self. We're talking about respect for others, even those you disagree with, and also respect for the community at large. So what were some of the examples that we did? Those of you who follow social media saw a number of these on both Twitter and Facebook. The examples included classroom readings and discussion, literature, whether it's for our youngest students or our students who are studying in high school, gives us a lot of information and a lot to think about regarding how humans treat each other and how humans should treat each other. There are also lessons taught by our counselors, focused on the specific ages of the children. There are morning announcements to try to focus the students at the very beginning of the day, and there are messages from older students to young students. So a few examples of this. In one of our schools, the students read a book that was called What Do You Do with a Chance? And then they talked about what they would do if they were given a chance. What would they do that maybe could make things a bit better for another person, or could make things a bit better for their school community? And not surprisingly, our students had some great ideas about what they could do if they had a chance. What would they do? What would they do differently? And what difference would they make? In another school, they focused on what is called the 6 pillars of character. And all the students participated in that, and what was great about this particular presentation was a group of teachers and counselors worked in the building and even developed a video to explain to the children what are these 6 pillars, and explain it in a way that was understandable by students at the elementary level, who certainly don't have the same understanding as our older students. The middle school and the high school, as you might imagine, it can be very different. You might be doing these lessons within your social studies class or your language arts class. And in the middle school, we had a gentleman whose name is Dr. Paul Wachowski, and he talked about the transformational nature of kindness and the importance of positivity. He's a man who had struggled with his own problems and challenges in life, but he talks about how he addressed that, how he embraced the things that made him different, and how he turned that around and has made a difference in the world. And throughout the schools, we do talk about growth mindset. You can decide that when something happens, it has just defined you, or you can use language that lets you know you're going to keep on moving, you're going to keep on working on growing, and you're going to learn from whatever it is you are dealing with every day. Those are just a few brief examples. I hope many students came home and talked to their parents about what was done in school, and I hope the lessons stay with people for years to come. The state also, during the month of October, during next week, they have a week that's designated as School Violence Awareness Week. During this week, mainly what we do is we really focus on making sure our students understand the Code of Conduct as it applies to them. All parents receive the Code of Conduct digitally at the beginning of each year, and have the link so that they can view it and they can talk to their children about it. And we want the students to know what the expectations are for them as well. It's easily found on the website as well. Also, the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. New Jersey has a very strict law, the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights, and we want to make sure everybody understands what are the requirements of that, what are the expectations there, because it is something that is enforced in our district. The third area has to do with, we are required as a public school district in the state of New Jersey to complete reports on any incident that involves vandalism, violence, substance abuse, harassment, intimidation, or bullying. And we are then required, under very specific state rules, to make reports to the state about each one of these, and then to summarize it during 2 report periods each year. So, a number of months ago, I know that I reported on the period from July 1 of 2017 to the end of December 2017. And I am now reporting on the January 1 to June 30th from last year. So you'll see a column that talks about a number of incidents. When the state calls them incidents, those are incidents where they do involve violence, vandalism, substance abuse, weapons, or when a harassment, intimidation, or bullying incident has been confirmed. And you can see the various numbers that are listed there. You can see During the period from January through June last year, Edison's number in that column definitely jumps out. I will tell you, I looked back and I looked at the first half of the year, and in that one, Edison was the lowest one in that column. So sometimes you do have that. You do have that where there are patterns. The second column, other incidents leading to removal, just about all of those in that column, you'll see there for the 3 secondary schools, just about all of those had to do with students who were using e-cigarettes, some type of e-cigarette. As of this point, the state requirements do not consider that to be substance abuse according to their definition, but it is another reason why students were suspended because of the use of e-cigarettes. So just about all of those can be attributed to that. In the next column, we have any time anyone claimed that there was harassment, intimidation, or bullying. Not all of those are found to be harassment, intimidation, bullying according to the state of New Jersey's law. A number of these that are in this column were found to be against the code of conduct, and there were consequences given, but it was not found to be harassment, intimidation, or bullying. I'm going to stop at those 3 columns for just a moment. And I just want to point out that in every school, there is a team, including the administrators, the counselor, and representative teachers, and a parent, who review this data for their particular school and see if there are any trends and see what do we need to change and do differently for next year. So, for example, at the high school level, one of the trends last year was definitely the use of e-cigarettes. And as a result, there has been a renewed effort in the high school to try to make it clear to everyone, to make sure the parents all understand. There was a letter that went home to all parents, and to make sure all students understand the expectations. Not only the expectations in school, but the dangers of e-cigarettes. You know, the firms that market them, they don't mention the dangers. They give you flavors that are appealing, and they make it look as though it would be cool if you were using this. But the school is letting people know the dangers there, and again, letting both the students know that and also the parents. The last 2 columns are requirements we have under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. We are required to do trainings regarding what is involved in the law and making sure students understand it or staff understand it. You'll see some schools have 0 in this column. That's because they did their trainings in the first half of the year. Some schools do it in both parts of the year. But again, the state report requires that we break it down into 2 different reports. And the HIB programs are programs that are provided to students, to staff, or to parents that provide positive ways to reinforce positive behavior so that we do have fewer incidents of harassment, intimidation, or bullying. It's an important goal of ours to continue to make sure that people understand why this is wrong and the proper way to behave. The last slide on my parts of the presentation include the names of the anti-bullying specialists. We have at least 1 in every school, and then we also have a coordinator for the whole district. His name is Joe Malanga. Any of these people can be contacted. People even have questions. They're not sure it's harassment, intimidation, or bullying, but they have questions. Please reach out to those people. You can also reach out to anyone who works in any of the schools if you have questions, and they will make sure you get to the right person for answers. So again, those are a summary of the 3 reports that are submitted to the state in the fall of the year. I don't know if there's any questions on that before we go to Mr. Panera's presentation.
I have a question.
If you're willing to take, I just need you to come because we're videoing it, and I just need you to say your name and address, please.
My name is Michael Cohen. I'm at 1605 Boynton Avenue. I would just love to know what's being done about the anti-Semitic stuff that's been going on in Franklin.
Sure. So, I know that the principal has sent letter the very first afternoon to all of the parents. Also reached out to the rabbi because in the past he has helped us. And I know she sent out another, after working with the teachers, matter of fact, worked with the teachers part of the professional day yesterday, talking about we already are doing character education in that school, a big effort on that, and yet here we have this incident that is not acceptable. So what do we do differently? And I know Dr. Cambria sent out a letter to parents yesterday, and she explained what is going to be done differently, how they're working at grade level to talk about different resources to use both in the classroom and also to use for parents to be able to use as well. And that work has been undertaken and will be underway with the parents, but they were notified of that yesterday. Something we honestly do take seriously. On every given day, we come in hoping that our students are remembering the respect that they've learned at home and the respect that they're taught and shown in school. And I wish I could tell you every day that's what we find. And it is, it's a lot of things when that isn't the case. It's upsetting for the parents, it's upsetting for the teachers and the administrators certainly. I think we all have the same goals, and when we don't get there, we're disappointed, we're angry, we are a lot of different emotions, honestly. And then we have to be resilient too, and we have to say, okay, so what is it we're going to do, and what are we going to do to change it again, and what are we going to do to make it better? That's what we have to do.
Right. I mean, I think that, you know, the incident that happened at Franklin, I mean, you sense, hopefully, I think the frustration that Dr. Dolan feels, and I think it's the same frustration that all the administrators felt. You know, the board as well. We do a lot of work, we focus on this and what happens, and it's not acceptable. And so it's about, number one, communicating that there's no tolerance for that at an age-appropriate level, which, given a 1 to 5, you know, grade classroom is going to be different depending on each age level. And then also taking a look at the things that we do and how do we do it differently? How do we do better? How do we take a different approach if what we're doing isn't always impactful? But I mean, I hope that you can appreciate the specifics of that incident. I mean, we're not at liberty to discuss what the consequences were, but consequences were imposed, and it's an ongoing conversation. Yeah, sure, if you could please come up.
Hi, my name is Julie Steinberg, 109 Belmar Terrace, Westfield, New Jersey. I'm glad that Mr. Cohen brought up this issue. I don't know why it had to be brought up when there was a topic about the week of respect and bullying. And I guess my concern is, why hasn't there been more forthcoming condemnations of what's happened? Why hasn't there been more detail, not just about what's going to happen at Franklin, which is very important, or about those kids, one of whom has been repeatedly victimized at Franklin with anti-Semitic graffiti, and what's going to happen throughout the district? Because it's a problem, and it's not just here. The same week, we had an adjacent problem in Scotch Plains. Scotch Plains, I have to say, showed a lot of leadership and a lot of forthcoming, outright statements. I'm waiting for the administration to make statements like that without being compelled by questions. And I guess my question is, what is it going to take for us to have a meaningful dialogue? And more importantly, specifically, what is being done? What are the committees here doing? What are they not just doing at Franklin, but at all the levels? We had a week off for teachers, a day off yesterday for teachers' workshops. What's being done there? Was this brought up? Was it discussed? What is the plan, and how will you continue to communicate with us so that we don't have to just come here to ask these questions, but the information will be provided to us in a manner that's appropriate, timely, and gives us a sense of safety and confidence in the leadership?
So the principal of Franklin School, I know that's only part of your point, the principal of Franklin School did communicate immediately with the people in her school. I certainly did give a comment and shared it. I believe, I'd have to go back and check, but I believe that was on Thursday. The incident happened on Wednesday. The president of the board made a comment on Thursday as well. This is not a topic we haven't thought of before, just a few things off the top of my head. We have integrated into our curriculum from elementary to middle to high school a Holocaust curriculum that is integrated into other curriculum, whether that is in social studies, whether those are in the books that are read, and all of those have discussions. It's addressed at all those levels. We also regularly have speakers come in different ways and speak with our children at different levels. Additionally, we are hosting this year a graduate class from Kane University that is a class for teachers to learn how to teach about the Holocaust. And it has been offered this year. We have a class of 20 of our teachers who are attending that class, and there's another class offered in the spring that continues that work. It is something that, again, we know is an important part of our curriculum, and it is also, as I mentioned in part of one of the reports, we do look at our data every year to see what are the areas we need to address. Sometimes it is, so we look at what areas we need to address and focus on from year to year. Another piece of it is a lot of you who do either come to board meetings, watch board meetings, or read the articles in the paper, or perhaps the synopsis that is sent out. You know that one of our areas of focus this year is on social and emotional learning. So developing the skills of our students, their social skills, and also their abilities to show their emotions, to share their emotions, etc. And there's a reason for that, and it's a somewhat broader issue that addresses exactly what you're talking about. You know, a large part of that, not all of it, is respect, and how do you respect others, and understanding how your actions, your words, how that impacts someone else. So part of the work yesterday in professional development were our teachers involved in learning more about social and emotional learning, the skills that students need to develop so that they're not going to do something that is going to be as outrageous, as unacceptable, as can happen at some times and as does happen at some times. So that was part of the work that was done yesterday. And again, it's something we are committed to, and we will continue to be committed to.
Okay, anybody else? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, I'm Jane Sarwin, 540 Elm Street. In light of the fact that about 6 months ago there was an incident at Franklin School that, from what I understand, did involve a swastika, and the parents were never informed about what happened. And it was called an incident, not named exactly what it was. And now we have this incident that just occurred, a very similar incident. And I understand that these are forthcoming plans that you have, but is there anything that you can see that will be changing in the next, say, 4 weeks? And I can appreciate what happened yesterday with Dr. Cambria and the teachers, but I feel like there has to be a greater sense of community and meeting the kids where they're at. And not every child responds to books. Some kids need to draw or act or hear people speak or connect with someone who they respect in their community. And you're not going to catch every child, but I do feel like it has to be something greater that can't be solved in 4 hours. But I do appreciate what they did. Thank you.
So I'd have to agree that not every child responds the same way, and actually the teachers and the teachers basically do try to address it in different ways. You're absolutely right. Not everyone's going to hear it the same way, and sometimes there are speakers who come, and there's a software program that I'm not going to remember. Since we used to be able to have Holocaust speakers, people who are survivors come and speak with our students, that's harder and harder, right? But we don't want to lose that message, so there is actually a software that is being used so that it's similar. It's not quite as good, but you're absolutely right. People do learn differently. So I take that point. I didn't stress that when I spoke before, but I take your point.
I guess, can I ask a question actually, just from the board's perspective? And I think Steinberg, Right, you know, you said you applauded what was in some ways a much more visible incident in Scotch Plains, you know, just in terms of the size, right? And where, and it happened outside and things like that. We feel like we made a very strong statement almost immediately. And so what happened there that you feel like didn't happen here?
What I would say is I understand the balance that the administration needs to strike in a situation like this. It can get very heated very quickly. You have rights of children to protect and privacy concerns. Those are all legitimate issues. But from my perspective, the response was very muted. Comments were made when asked. Nobody went out in a way that made me feel, yes, there is going to be a strong response from this administration and this board. Was sent out to one elementary school where it happened, but it's happened twice. And the victim, by the way, has been targeted twice. That kid was also the victim of the swastika last time. So it is a pattern, and you don't want to think the worst of our community, but
Right.
the term, constant vigilance from Harry Potter applies here. Without it, without clearness of leadership, when it's quiet, when it's requested as opposed to firmly and clearly given, it's very difficult to get a sense of safety and security and confidence that I normally have in what we have here. I love our schools, and I love our community. This is extremely frightening for me and my family. And it's extremely frightening even for me to be here today, as I'm sure it is for my counterparts who spoke. As I'm sure it is for that family and their son, and the other two children and their families. The confidence has to be that not only do we need to speak, but that we are being spoken to in a way that provides a level of confidence that you guys are on it, that you're all in. Not that you're gonna punish this kid or expose them, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. And it's not an issue of comparison between what happened in Scotch Plains versus what happened here. They're all unacceptable. They're all awful. They are all intended to frighten and to bully and to harass and to scare people. So like I said, I appreciate your perspectives, and I am grateful as a parent, truly, for everything you do for my children and for this community. But in this case, I feel very strongly that when it happens, when there is a muted response, when there is room for doubt amongst others about where the board sits or where the administration, for that matter, sits, because it hasn't been a primary announcement, it hasn't been a focus, it hasn't been more than one or two sentences, it creates uncertainty.
Right, and so I'll just add to that, you know, look, there should be no fear whatsoever. And if we weren't clear in communicating, or there was something mute about the way we communicated, then I'll say to you now, we are all in. I think one of the things that you need to appreciate is that when that happens, there's an investigation that has to occur, and so events are sort of unfolding over the course of many days, sometimes weeks. And so, you know, there's both a process in place that we're trying to honor and recognize, while at the same time, you know, we're a little bit in shock as well and upset. And so if the response seemed muted in some way, I apologize, because that was not the intention. This board is all in, we have been all in, this administration, these staff, they work their butts off on these issues constantly, all day, every day. So they're all in, and we just have to keep being all in.
There should be no doubt of anybody in this town that it's unacceptable, that it won't be tolerated, that, you know, as a community, we need to come together. That should never, ever, and I'm sorry that you did have that question or that level of doubt. Directly affects me. My son was in Franklin last year. You know, I happen to be a member of one of the temples here, so trust me, it's home. And at no point did I doubt. At no point did I not. Again, I'm on the inside, but it's unacceptable. It is wholly unacceptable.
Thank you for that. I hope that you guys will be taking measures in addition to the investigation with the various committees and resources that you have to perhaps not just proceed as planned, but maybe to make some changes and to look and see what changes can be made quickly in order to help restore that. Thank you.
So, I appreciate everything you said, and what I would just tag along with that is, to me, it sounds like the Franklin community got a response to this, but the rest of the school community did not get a response. So that's where I'm coming from, where it's like not all in. I mean, like, I didn't get any communication about this. I heard this through the grapevine.
Right.
And then the other part that
There are things that happen at a lot of schools every day where that school community just finds out. No, I mean,
Understood.
recognize that, you know.
Understood.
Okay.
And I would call it what it is, which is an anti-Semitic incident. And I haven't heard that language used yet. And so it's got, like, where I'm disappointed is that this was brought up by the public. This should have been, like, we just had, Dr. Dolan just gave us a rundown of, Tolerance Week and that kind of stuff, and I didn't hear this incident mentioned.
But
It's a pretty big.
also, to Dr. Dolan's defense, she was at a segue point, and I know there was something that we were gonna discuss, was that we brought up with the public, because we talked about it in another meeting. Again, she may have been going to the end, you, and rightly so, point of order, went up and brought it up.
Okay, so I don't know how this all
No,
works.
but
so
I'm
I
just
take
saying,
I take that.
and again, I respect the fact that you're here, as I always say, it is a community. I want people to come to meetings, I want people to express things, because by no means, and I've said this before, are we perfect. And again, it is a community, I always talk about education starts with the community.
Right, so, again, and I don't wanna, beat this, beat that horse, but this should be discussed at a school, like a whole, holistic level. It should not just be discussed in Franklin, because who knows where the next incident happens.
Okay, I hear you. You have one more report?
I do not, but Paul does. Mr. Panera has a report on the assessments from the spring.
A much lighter topic.
Yes. Good evening. I'm here to talk about the state assessments, which for the last year will be called Park. After this, you'll see some slides that tell you how the name has changed. And there are also some other changes at the state level that have been presented and recommended and that may in fact go into effect. So at the end of the presentation, I'll speak to that a little bit. I guess the bottom line, especially since there are a lot of young people here, is it looks very promising that there will be less testing, and that's a good thing, I think. I think we all agree with that. So I'll just start off with a quick overview of what PARC is, or what it has been. PARC stands for the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. That started off as a large consortium nationally, and it's dwindled down to just a few states, if not a couple, and so it's not quite a consortium anymore. It's the testing, at least for 2018, so I'll start by talking about 2018, and then I'll put some perspective on what the spring holds for us. But the testing occurs in all grades 3 through 11 in ELA, and then the same case in mathematics. In mathematics, the testing is Math 3, 4, 5, right through 8, and then their end of course assessments, one for Algebra 1, one for Geometry, and one for Algebra 2. So there are 5 levels that students can achieve. The first being not yet meeting grade level expectations, all the way up to the 5th level, which is exceeding grade level expectations. And then there are the degrees between 2, 3, and 4. So what I've done with this chart is it demonstrates for English language arts all the grade levels in bar graph form, and the 3 different colors you see there, the tallest one is blue, of course, and that's Westfield. And then green is the Park states, and then red is the state of New Jersey. So if you go through each of those grades, you'll see that for the most part, Westfield is achieving at about 90%, either a point below or a point or 2 above. And then relative to the state and the other Park states, there's a gap, which is typical of Westfield, whether it be SATs or ACTs or other kinds of testing, APs. There's usually a gap. Westfield students achieve really well. So it's pretty much at the 90% level across the board in ELA. What you might notice in grades 10 and 11 is Westfield might be a tad below the 90, and then so are the state and Park. And one reason for that is that when it comes to the high school 10th and 11th grade tests in ELA, the current or the 2018 cohort of students was allowed to use an alternate assessment. It could be an SAT, an ACT, and maybe a couple other alternatives if they had taken the prior tests. So those students, then half of the students in those grades did not in fact take the Park test. So those reflect the remainder of students who did. And the ones who didn't take it would have achieved 1,500 on the SATs or some score, equivalent score, that would enable them to not have to take the Park. And then math, I guess I would give you the same kind of overview that Westfield achieves right around 90. When you're looking at approaching, meeting, and exceeding expectations, levels 3, 4, and 5, that Westfield is achieving right about the 90% across the board. And then there's two notes. So in grade 8, my note there explains that approximately half of the 8th graders in Westfield take Algebra 1. So the 8 there is Math 8. So half of the students in 8th grade will take Math 8, and then approximately the other half will take Algebra 1. And so the Algebra 1 half of those 8th graders are indicated in Algebra 1, which kind of looks like it's a high school score, but Algebra 1 technically isn't a high school test. It's an end-of-course test that 8th graders and even in some cases 7th graders take. So they're all clumped into Algebra 1, and that explains or gives some context for why the 8th grade's percentage would be lower across the board with Westfield, the state, and the Park states. Because Algebra 1 in 8th grade, half of our students take it, but in many districts, there are many students who take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. And then you see the scores for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. The Geometry and Algebra 2 performances are put in context by the second note, which points out that approximately 2/3 of the 10th and 11th graders in Westfield High School completed the graduation requirement via another state-approved assessment, such as SAT and ACT. Now that was referring to the cohort of 2018. If the Park High School graduation assessment requirements continued, then there's this whole other matrix that would have meant that you couldn't use those alternate assessments, and then every student would have to take all of the assessments, and there's all kinds of different contingencies that we will likely not have to deal with, so I won't drag you through all those. But at another point, I will talk to you about how those requirements have shifted, and I'll share those with you in a slide or two. What I have here is a jumble of dots that probably don't mean a whole lot from where you're sitting, but I think just the pattern can give you a sense of what we do with the data. So each test this is a district, this is grade 4 math, district-wide. And by the way, to our communications director, after this, we want to pull that slide because it's not really for public consumption, but I thought, I don't think on TV they're going to read the little dots in the bottom, but those are standards, and the state doesn't really want people to have access to what standards are linked to what questions and difficulty levels. So we can make this a public document, but I think for the sake of our presentation, what I'd like to be able to tell you is that our principals and supervisors and teachers drill down into these evidence statements, and what it tells us is where, again, Westfield scores relative comparatively to the others, and in some cases, I refer to it often as the gap. If the gap between us and, say, the state is tighter, then that suggests maybe we have to look at that particular skill. We expect sort of a bigger gap between us and the state in each of those skill areas. So if it gets to be a little close, then we start to look closely at it. So our supervisors in math and ELA, for example, have drilled down into each grade level and in each school and come up with a list of areas of strength and then areas of growth, places that we can look at and then reinforce. And then they have recommended activities that can be done at each grade level, and we're already implementing those based on this data. While Park has been a burden, the data, especially grades 3 through 8, can be useful. Where it gets a little bit tricky to use at the high school is just simply because the sampling is all over the place. Not every student takes it, so it's difficult to make any kind of comparative analysis of it. But for the most part, this is what happens. Yesterday at one of our professional development sessions, Dr. Bolton and the math department over at Edison were sitting at their laptops going through these different evidence statements and really drilling down into which areas that they saw could be improved and what kinds of activities might help in those areas. And so it's a really good use of the data. So, okay, I need my notes on this as well. So this is a chart that came out last Wednesday, and what's been going on, and hopefully, you haven't had to be caught up in that the way, we do, but the new acting commissioner last spring did a tour of the whole state and many counties and collected a lot of information and input from teachers and parents and community members and all. And I'll speak for myself. I thought he and his team came up with some really good recommendations to make Park more palatable, to make it more useful and less burdensome. And he and his team delivered those to the State Board of Education. They went back and forth for a few months, and then, which got us a little nervous because we thought the recommendations would sail through. But then last Wednesday, it seemed that they would be approved, but there is a 60-day period of public input. So I guess we're about 6 days into that, and we hope that'll go by quickly. And then people like Dr. Nelson, who's here today, can finally figure out their schedule for the spring. And we were talking before about when this all started a few years back, we had to schedule about 11 days of testing, and now Dr. Nelson is looking at maybe 4 days, maybe even a little less. That's a big help, but I'm sure the students all appreciate that as well. So anyway, I'll try to just do this in a nutshell and not walk through line by line, but the current regulations stipulate that students, which is what was the case last year, had to take the English Language Arts test in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. This is just high school now, high school assessment graduation requirements. So ELA 9, 10, 11, and then the end of course Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. The amendment now would allow the 11th grade test to not have to, they wouldn't have to take the 11th grade test, and then the end of course in 9th and 10th grade for Algebra 1, Geometry, or Geometry and Algebra 2. So yeah, they would take the end of course in 9th and 10th grade and not have to take all 3 end of course tests. So 11th grade in effect would be eliminated in this spring. So 11th graders would not be testing if they could, yeah. So that would go from 6 tests to 4 tests, which is a good thing. And then even those remaining tests would be diminished by 1 unit. So like math has 4 units in it, so it would be 3. ELA 3 would be 2. So ultimately that drills down, or that comes down to, you have to take and pass ELA 10 and Algebra 1. So that's sort of almost like going back to the old days when you took the HESPAs and you had to get an English test and a math test in there. So the big plus is that the state was looking to take away the alternative test. We've been using SAT. Everyone in the state has been able to invoke, I guess, an SAT or equivalent alternate assessment instead of having to pass all the PARCC tests. And that was going to be removed, but now it's back in. So that's a very, very positive thing. And if this all goes through, that has a great impact. And it's not just in Westfield. You can just imagine districts that might really struggle to have the majority of their students pass. They would all have to go through alternative portfolios, which means you have to have teachers assisting students in alternate, almost like, yeah, they have to develop portfolios of work. They have to be assessed. They have to be sent down to the state. You'd have thousands and thousands and thousands of students across the state having to do that. And you'd have way fewer percentage in Westfield, but still not a great use of student time and staff time. So yes, and the last part is just that students will have the opportunity to take the test over if they choose not to use the alternative assessment option. And so those are the changes. When my current website, the website currently has this information, But when it's definitive, it'll be stated, more definitively, and it'll probably have a smiley face next to it or something, but, no, actually, I'm not a smiley face kind of guy, but it'll be clear that the changes have gone through.
So Paul,
Yeah.
So you said the amendment was passed last Wednesday, so the logistics in terms of students, I'm sure there's a lot to still be worked out. Like, what does what's being called remediated in look like for students who want to retake it, who didn't pass it the first time, and things like that. But this is a done deal in terms of the current requirements.
It still has a 60-day comment period and has to be passed a second time. Well, it's
Okay.
54 more days.
But we're gonna act as if, in terms of scheduling, that this is our deal, and move forward with the scheduling. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So this is just a look at what the coming year should be. So that's the mandatory state testing for 2019. So the test is now called the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, ELA, and Math. So it's no longer PARC. It makes sense. The rationale was that it is not a consortium, so you have to call it something else. And the learning standards for the state in the last few years have been transitioned from Common Core to the New Jersey. So they've been, revised, and now they're the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. So the name makes sense. So those are ELA for the grades 3, 4, and 5, and it includes the science assessment as well. Across the board, you'll have, so math goes from 4 units to 3, so that's a lot less testing time, and ELA goes from 3 to 2, so that's less testing time. The same holds true for middle school. So you have the same name changes, but also 4 units in math become 3, and 3 units in ELA become 2. And then finally, at the high school, I've kind of walked through that already, but you'd also see diminished time and less testing, and those are the windows. So those dates don't mean you're testing every day, by the way. They're just the windows that you have to get the testing in. You have to schedule it within those windows. There's a lot going on here, so Dr. Dolan, you're great with details. Have I missed any area, or?
I think that's a general sense, and as soon as everything is finalized, we'll make sure we get the communication out to parents at the appropriate levels.
Okay, and lastly, I'll just point out that on our school website, our district website, if you go under curriculum and state assessments, you can find a bunch of resources there. And if you have any more questions about, the current scores you may have received about a month ago for your students, or what's happening going forward, you can find information there on the website.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So for high schoolers, knowing whether or not they made the graduation requirement, is that going to be clearly stated on their profile through the Genesis system or whatever system, that either they've made it through an alternative assessment or their score in PARC? So will parents and students know that they've met the graduation requirement through the system?
Yes, Dr. Nelson, again, I put him on the spot since he's here, but he works very closely with our student data management expert here in the district. And so they go into Genesis, and there's a formula that allows us, so that we plug in what the requirements are, and then it tells us who's met those requirements. And then between Dr. Nelson and the guidance staff, they'll call the students down and notify the parents if there are any concerns about it. Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Paul. That's it.
That is it.
I'd like to ask the board to approve the minutes of our board meeting held on September 25th, 2018, and the private minutes of the same date. Can I have a second? Brendan, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions for absences? No. All right, moving down the agenda, personnel. Peggy.
I'd like the board to consider personnel items 1 to 20.
Second.
Ken, thank you. Dr. Dolan, I think you'd like to say something?
We do have the announcement of one retirement. Tonight I'm announcing with regret the retirement of Jenny Lagola, effective December 31st. For 24 years, Jenny has been a valued member of the business office staff, and she will be missed by her colleagues and her friends in the department, and we certainly all wish her the best in her retirement.
Does anybody have any other questions about the items? No? Dana?
Lynn Benner,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Olich,
Yes.
Peggy Astor,
Yes.
Charles Ostroff,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Moving on, facilities, I'm gonna postpone my report till we get to finance to talk about Keller. That's all the facilities report that I had. Dana, is there anything happening in the district otherwise that we need to talk about tonight?
No.
Everything's on track. Long-range planning, Amy.
The committee met this evening, right before this meeting, and we spent some time talking about a conversation that Gretchen and Peggy and Dr. Dolan and Dana had with our mayor and the town administrator about various building projects and likely future building projects and what potential impact that might have on enrollment for us. The too long didn't read version of that is that at this point, the foreseeable projects are relatively small and in line with the one that we currently have up and running that we can judge the results from, which is 333 Central. We have a handful of students that have come to us from that project. They're spread across different schools at different levels. So obviously we'll have to keep an eye on that and try to make sure we don't have sextuplets moving into a 3-bedroom apartment in a new building. But if things stay consistent with what we see, we think we can manage things for the time being, and we'll keep an eye on those projects. If any bigger project starts to come to the fore, we'll obviously try to get more involved and see what size of units are going to be involved and what are the increased chances of additional kids coming into our school district. And that's really kind of the highlight of this meeting. I think we need to try to schedule another one probably before too much deeper into the fall, but it was, I think, really helpful to circle the wagons on this one for now. And I'll circulate notes to you all after tonight.
Thank you.
Great.
So nothing to vote on.
Any questions for Amy?
Not this time.
Policies, Brendan.
Yeah, ask the board to approve policy item number 1.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. To approve the superintendent's decision on HIV incident 19L01 for the reasons set forth therein. Dana?
Lynn Benner,
Yes.
Ken Diamond.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Charles Ostroff,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
And that's it for policies tonight. We have a meeting next Tuesday night.
Okay. Curriculum instruction and programming. In Michael's absence, I would ask the board to consider curriculum agenda item 1. Can I have a second?
Second.
Rob, thank you. These are the district field trips. They're listed in attachment 1. There's no curriculum meeting since we previously met, so, but there's probably one coming up soon. I just don't know when it is. Does anybody have any questions about the agenda item?
No.
No? Dana?
Lynn Benner,
Yes.
Kent Diamond.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg.
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Finance, Charles.
Okay, how do you,
Well, why don't you move everything into, make a motion, let's get it on the table, and then I'll make a report about what the facilities committee is
Sure.
recommending to the board.
but before I do that, we did have a finance committee meeting on Friday, and we went over our fund balances, which we seem to be on schedule for this year. We talked about, since we are self-insured with our health insurance, we actually, this summer, there was our costs for hospitalizations were wide of where we've been in the past in comparison to last year. One of the good notes is that we do have stopgap insurance, that about half of those numbers that we'll get back on, and but we're still confident that, you know, through our reserves and where we've estimated to be, we'll average out for the year. And that our reserves are healthy. We've taken into account our 5-year plan, just like talking about the generators, the extra work that's got to be done at Keller Stadium that we didn't have to bond for, potential TV studio at the high school, one of the things that we are doing, which is replacing all the doors at every school, and we're also, you know, doing that for security reasons. Also, lobby in the middle school, renovation, some of the bathrooms. These are all the items that we did contemplate in the 5-year plan, and we feel that our reserves, which are taken into account, that we're in good shape with. We also discussed that there is one of the neighbors to the tennis courts across the street. There was a strip of land that he had asked that he wanted to acquire. We felt as a committee that we didn't want to, because right now the land is a nice square, and for any given period of time that we have to use that property, it takes away maybe from using it as a developable strip or piece of land. And that last item is that our food service contract, we're in the last year of that, and we're gonna go up for RFP on it. So those are the items that we discussed. I'll make sure that I get notes to everybody, but also on the agenda, We do have items 1 through 12. Can I get a?
Second.
Okay. Before we go to discuss.
Brendan.
And before we, of course, go to our discussion on items which are in here as it relates to Keller Field, I did want to point out just items, I think it's items 11 and 12, which were gifts. So particularly, no, I have it right here. I put my little dog ear right there. So item 11 is accept a gift of $87 from the Jefferson School PTO to purchase a tower garden growing system. And then item 12, accept gifts from the Westfield Coalition for the Arts to be used as follows. $555.95 to purchase a classroom amplification system for the Edison Intermediate School Art Department. $595 to purchase a document camera for the Roosevelt Intermediate School Art Department. $1,170 to purchase a scrim for the Westfield High School Theater Department. And then last, $1,804.44 to purchase 75 choral folders for the Westfield High School Choral Music Department. And now I understand we're gonna suspend our vote to have a discussion as it relates to the Keller Field.
Yeah, so I will, so agenda item 2 relates to the addendum to the Keller Stadium project contract. So I know you guys, some of you have heard this before. I'm just gonna ask you to indulge me because I'm gonna sort of restate where we are for purposes of the record being complete. So we had decided as a board, I think at our August 29th meeting, based on the advice of our engineer and our architect, who I see you're here, and I wanna thank you for being here tonight, and our lawyers, that we reconsider the timeline for the Keller Field project. So at that point, after conversations with Dr. Nelson and Ms. Mamry about the impact on the spring and the fall schedule, we decided to, and we voted on moving the project into March. As you know, at our last meeting, a number of members of the track and field families, athletes, alumni, parents have all come forward. They came to our meeting. They also have sent us a number of emails and voiced some concerns about moving the project back to March. After that meeting, we agreed that we were going to reconvene as a facilities committee. The facilities committee is Brendan, Charles, myself, and Kent. We met again with Dr. Nelson and Ms. Mamry and had ongoing conversations again, revisited the issue, drilled down one more time on the number of athletes who are going to be impacted in the spring, the number of athletes who are going to be impacted in the fall. We looked at ways to alleviate issues and provide other practice space within the town of Westfield for some of our track and field athletes. We talked about, in broad terms, the logistics if we were to move track and field athletes to other track and fields in the district, what that would look like. Luckily, we had some experience because we allowed Scotch Plains to use our track and field when they redid their stadium, track and field, I don't know if it's a stadium, a number of years ago, so we were able to ask a lot of questions about that. And the number of individuals, the number of buses that were going to be needed. We were told that Union and Scotch Plains had already indicated that they were open to sharing fields, so we then had a lot of conversation about whether our athletes were going to be sitting on a bus for an extended period of time before they could get out and practice. And then at the end of the day, I circulated to the board. We've also had a press release that's gone out. The recommendation of the committee to the full board, which is on the agenda to be voted on tonight, is that we condense by 5 weeks the period of the contract so that the start date would now be April 8th, which we feel like is a compromise that reflects the concerns that were expressed to us. It recognizes, it doesn't eliminate the need to transport some of our athletes, but we have a better sense of what that's going to look like. The coaches have been intimately involved in this process, and because none of us are track and field coaches, we rely on the experts that we hire to, and their representation to us is that this is a workable solution. One of the weeks that is going to be impacted is spring break. And so even though our athletes are still going to have to travel to alternate locations, they're not going to also be juggling a full day of school on top of that, which was a concern we heard a lot about. The April 8 compromise allows the track team and the families, if they wish to hold the Blue Devil Invitational. It's our understanding that we're going to widen the track at Roosevelt to allow for some additional local practice space. And that was a recommendation that came from the athletic department and the coaches. 3 buses are going to be obtained for transportation to either Scotch Plains and or Union. About 50 kids will be on those buses. The details of what that's going to look like and the logistics have all been discussed by the coaching staff. This board has not been party to that conversation, so I have to say, unfortunately, if you have specific questions about that tonight, this is still a plan in progress, and we don't have answers to those questions tonight. But based on all the information that we've gotten from all the experts, based on our objective, which is to consider, the entire program, the desperate need for renovations of our track and field in a timely manner, the concerns of our engineer and our architects, this is what the Facilities Committee is recommending to the full board. You guys, I was sort of working off the top of my head, so what did I miss, what did I not?
For any student that's going to be taking the bus, which is my understanding that it'll be mandatory for any student.
I don't know that's mandatory,
Okay.
let's
It'll
refrain
be-
from that, but
it
there'll
was a
be
discussion.
space available.
And that there would be a study hall
Right.
available or required, depending on how they work out individual
What was
logistics.
about the throwers? Was it an indicator also that the throwers would not, they're more than likely not going to be transported? That the throwers were more?
Yeah, I don't know, right, I think that was right, that there are certain athletes, I'm not gonna get into specific
what I'm saying,
positions, because then
yeah.
I'm just gonna make a fool of myself, and Mr. McCutcheon's gonna point out to me that I said something wrong. So, there are certain athletes who don't have to travel, who will not have to travel because they now currently practice behind Edison, in certain positions. So it's not a matter of moving the entire track and field team 5 days a week, every day. And that there's some combination because of training schedules, practice schedules, the different types of events, that not every single athlete has to go every day. There are certain athletes who require a physical track and field to practice on, and so that, of course it's going to impact them in a different way than it would everybody else. Did I miss anything? Does the board have any questions before I open this up to the public?
Just to reiterate, both fall and spring sports will be impacted by this. It's not just the spring sports bearing the brunt of this.
Right, it's inevitable.
Right.
So, yeah.
Both sides are being
Right.
impacted.
Even with the current schedule.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, correct.
Well, the stadium will not be available in the track and area for August, so that facility will not be available for August. And there's the potential to go, as we're putting a plan in place, there's a potential that we've reserved for the 2 weeks into September that could potentially be affected as a backup. Didn't we discuss that also?
Yeah, right. I mean, we
It
would.
may be available in August, it's weather dependent.
Yes.
Right, with this date that we're changing, the April 8th date, the substantial completion date would be July 31st. So assuming that the weather is perfect and everything else is
That's all,
perfect.
but that's all the cards falling into place.
Right, correct.
And we're not doing this just to preserve football.
No.
There's,
No.
I think, 9 teams that use that stadium regularly in the fall, and Sandy mentioned something close to 75 games. that-
70 games.
70,
games
yeah,
that
I
are
mean,
scheduled there.
right. So there are 3 levels of football, 3 levels of field hockey, varsity boys and varsity girls soccer that use the stadium in the fall. 70 games would have had to have been rescheduled. That's approximately 200 athletes. And 70 games would be rescheduled in the fall.
And that's not counting PAL or any other youth group that uses our fields.
No, we're
as well.
talking about our
Oh, no,
Westfield,
no.
yeah, the high school
Talking
athletes.
total impact to the community.
Right. So, I'm happy to open up the podium. We're happy to hear. I'll just reiterate again that we don't have the details. It's not so we are a governing board. We hire experts, including your track and field coaches, who feel like this is a workable plan and they have a plan in place that they've started to carve out for you. We don't know those details yet. So if you have questions along those lines for us, we don't have the answers to those tonight. It is indisputable that this is an inconvenience and there's no ideal solution. We have not presented it as an ideal solution, but it is a temporary solution so that we all get a brand new track and field into that for the following season. So we're happy to hear any concerns, any questions, answer anything that you have before we vote tonight. When you come up, please say your name and address into the microphone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jim McCutcheon. I live at 162 Harrison Avenue in Westfield. I speak to you tonight as a parent of a senior high school student, James, who's here with me again tonight, as he was a few weeks ago, and who's also one of the captains of the Westfield track and field team. I'm also here as president of the Friends of Westfield Track on behalf of its board of directors. First of all, on behalf of the board of directors of Friends of Westfield Track and many of the parents, I just want to say thank you very much for moving the time from March 1 to April 8th. That gives the team an additional 5 weeks that they could practice on their own track before this busing plan begins for most of the 270 students who participate on the team, where they have to be bused to other towns for practice. And we were particularly encouraged in the press release to see other proposals aimed at easing the burdens on our kids during the remaining 9 weeks of the season after April 8th, and when the busing is to occur. It's clear from the swift action taken by the board and by the school administration that they announced in the press that the voices of the parents and the students of the track and field team were heard. So we thank you very much for that. We know there was a lot of work done, and it was done in a very short amount of time, and we greatly appreciate it. Last night, at the invitation of Sandy Mamory, the board of the Friends of Westfield Track and Field met with Sandy, Dr. Nelson, coaches Tefelsky and Barati to hear further details of the plans for busing and the other proposals outlined in the press release. Before saying anything further on that, I'd just like to thank Sandy publicly for reaching out to us to discuss the plans and to thank her, Dr. Nelson, the coaches, and the board for the considerable time and effort that went into this plan. Now, during our meeting last night, they were able to provide us with some further details and ideas on what they have to do to bus many of the 270 track and field athletes to tracks in Union and Scotch Plains. And they're thinking of a third location, which they haven't finalized yet, and how they hope to minimize the extra time needed for the practices. Of course, we had a lot of questions last night, and many of the details are still a work in progress that they hope to work out in the coming months. We're also interested to hear about some of the other proposals mentioned in the press release, including widening the jogging path at Roosevelt Intermediate School that you mentioned, to use as an additional training facility in town to reduce the number of student athletes that would be needed to be bused out of town. In discussing some of these proposals, however, while they are creative and we encourage more of this out-of-the-box thinking, we don't agree that some of these, including the Roosevelt jogging path, can serve as feasible alternatives in solving the problems from the busing plan. And with respect to that Roosevelt jogging path, that now is a jogging path made of dirt and gravel. In the press release, it's referred to as a cinder track. It is nothing like a cinder track. They're thinking of widening it so that it could be used for certain type of workouts. And hearing the type of workouts, it was not feasible. To my belief, it's not feasible. There are trees lined up on one side. There's a link fence lined up on the other side, right where they want to do those sprints. It's not 100 yards. The most is 55 yards. There's not much they can get on that track for that purpose. I don't think they can move the trees. Moving the link fence moves into the soccer field. So it didn't really seem like a feasible. I liked the idea, but it was not a feasible idea, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it. But we like them thinking outside the box, and we hope to hear some more ideas about it. And now I know the board is prepared to vote tonight on adopting a new start date of April 8th, 2019, with a substantial completion date of July 31st. But based on the statements in the press release, we're concerned that the board, you, are working on several misconceptions that may be influencing your decision. And I heard them repeated here tonight. Let me tell you about a few of them. One is the number of athletes competing after May 7th. From the press release, it seems that there's only a few elite athletes that are competing for the state championships after May 7th. While it's true that the athletes competing after May 7th is reduced substantially, it goes from 270 to 150, not a handful. Still, that number is double of what most other field teams have. Still, we need to bus most of those kids out of the 150 to other tracks all during May. It's only until June, the first week and a half of June, that a few elite athletes are now competing for the state championships or in track known as the Meet of Champions. We hope to have a dozen, maybe more this year. We have a very talented team, and some of them are here tonight. The second thing is the difficulty in moving the fall teams versus the spring teams. Now, there's a lot of talk about moving the teams and moving the project earlier too, because it's easier to move spring teams than it is to move the fall teams. And they mentioned 70 games in the fall against 6 meets for the spring track, and there's 5 teams in the fall against 2 teams in the spring. But none of that is really what counts. It's not the right type of math. The real issue is on any given day, pick any day during fall, any day in the spring. How many athletes are you displacing from the Keller field and track to another location? And where is that location? In the fall, you have maybe 66 to 100 athletes on the field in the fall that need to be displaced, and they'll be displaced to another field probably in this town. In the spring, however, you're only moving 2 teams, track and lacrosse. But that's 270 and another 60. You're talking about 330 athletes every day to another location. Now, the lacrosse team can be moved from that field at Keller over to Houlihan. That's not a difficult move, from what I think. In fact, it's actually a better turf field. I think some lacrosse players are happy. For the track team, though, you're moving 270 kids. Actually, there'll be some field event throwers, about 50 of them, who'll be practicing in Edison. With the other 220 athletes will be bused to another location. Probably right now it looks like Scotch Plains or Union. They're still looking for a third location. So it's not really moving 8 teams or 20 teams or these many games. It's moving 200 and some odd people against 100 people. And they're doing it every day. Those teams in the fall, you'll be moving soccer one day, football one day, and field hockey one day. So that they're not even being affected every day. During the spring, it's the track team that is being moved. Over 200 of them every single day during the entire spring after April 8th. So when you're looking at what's easier to move or how difficult it is, I think it's pretty clear that moving the 200 plus from the track team to other towns, still not to be determined, is much more difficult than finding space here in town for the 60 to 100 kids who are on the fields in the fall. Not only that, but at the last meeting it was said that we don't have control of those other fields in Westfield. Well, I understand the mayor has said she'll be offering to help us with that, and that they will put those teams, and high school teams may have a priority on some of those fields. I also suggest that any influence we have on moving our teams within Westfield is much greater than moving our team to another track somewhere in Union County. Realistically, who wants their track, when their team is practicing, to be invaded by 200 Blue Devils coming in and practicing on the same track? Our track is already crowded, as it is. To be joining another team on a track is difficult. While they say they'll probably be finished, there's no guarantee of that. And the way I know some sprinters and some long-distance guys and other runners, they'll be on the track for a little bit longer than the coaches probably like. So it will be a disruption to them, and it will last more than just probably hour they think the disruption is now. But throughout this whole time, I keep hearing about the change in the construction start date, that they had to move it from May to March. Now it's to April. And I keep wondering, why does this have to change? And the number one reason I kept saying is that they're worried about delays in construction, and that delays in the construction may push it into the fall season. Just so happens I was doing some reading this weekend. I was looking at the contract, the bid proposals, the specs, some light weekend reading. And I found in numerous times in the contract and the bid proposals that the contractor states that the May 7th to August 31st timeframe is sufficient time for the project. And that takes into account Okay, delays for weather, labor problems, material shortages, and other things that usually delay a construction project. So he was fully confident in that. Not only that, but he unequivocally stated several times that he can get it done on time. Now here's the real kicker. He certified several times in his bid proposal that not once in his 22 years in construction that he has ever been late on a deadline or had to pay penalties for not completing his work on time. 22 years and never late. So why is this board so concerned about delays and willing to push the start date to April 8th instead of May 7th? Why do our kids have to suffer to accommodate the contractor? Based on the contractor's own agreement and his stellar on-time record in 22 years, we see no reason why the original date for the project, May 7th to August 31st, needs to be changed to April 8th to July 31st, especially since such a change will harm our kids and their educational welfare. We think the board should postpone the vote or vote no tonight for the April 7th start date and relieve our kids of the detrimental effects the current busing plan will have on them. I thank you for your continued hard work and your demonstrated dedication in trying to solve this thing for our kids. I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate your service to our community. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to anything specific about the contract timeline?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let you.
And George and Bill, you can jump in if you want. So when they certify that they've never been charged, the contract does have liquidated damages for delays if they do not meet, if they do not meet their dates. When he certifies that he's never been charged for that, that doesn't mean that he hasn't been late. The way that the law works is the contractor is, they're allowed for certain normal weather conditions in New Jersey. If we don't have normal weather conditions in New Jersey, or if any other conditions, if there's something under the field that should arise during construction, which does happen occasionally, any of those things, he is allowed, and the courts will back him up on that, he is allowed an additional timeline for that, and that's what we're concerned with. We're not concerned with the contractor not being able to do the job. We're concerned with weather, similar to what we've had all summer long and continuing into this fall, or it's a very large project. The scope of the project is very large, and we're concerned that things could arise as they're doing construction that will cause them to have a delay, which he will be allowed to and will be entitled to if we take him to court. Do you guys have anything to add to that, or?
That's pretty much accurate. May I respond? I do understand the contract, and he does have the weather-related delays built into the contract as part of his time frame. The contract does allow for him an extended time if there are what they call severe weather delays.
Correct.
Severe weather delay under the contract is a month in which there's 10% more rain than they've had in the average rainfall in that same month in the last 5 years. So if that happens, it could be delayed. Now, we're worried about this past year, seemed like one of those. But we had someone go back and do all the numbers, look at everything. There was not a time when that clause would have kicked in that would have given him additional time for it.
Well,
We had 50% more rain this year.
our engineer, I think
It
is.
did not reach the definition of the severe weather.
I think
as
we
in
have
the
a person
contract.
here that actually can answer that, because I believe, Bill, and George have had several projects similar in scope to this going on, and I believe they were all delayed due to weather.
You guys, can you do me a favor? Can you just come to the podium and state your name, your relationship to the district, and.
Hi, folks. I'm William Edwards. I'm the district's engineer for the project. We actually have several projects right now that we're still trying to finish from last summer. This contractor in particular is trying to finish a job for us at Manasquan High School down in Manasquan, and unfortunately he's late because of the weather. Also, Pinelands Regional High School, another school district, we're just now putting the sod down in October, again because of tremendous weather delays. What we saw last summer, I think, is a sign of the climate change. We've all seen it. As an engineer, when we design stormwater management systems, we have to design to certain standards. And the state of New Jersey, in some areas, is now requiring that we use rainfall data from the Delmarva Peninsula because they have more severe rain down there. So what we're looking at is a global climate change, and we're trying to react to it the best we can. Now, we have to provide provisions in the contract that allow the contractor a reasonable amount of time to finish the project with reasonable weather delays. If we have another summer next year like we had this year, we may be looking at perhaps 30 days of delay. Okay? Other things that come into play would be, for example, material shortages. We're still trying to see how the federal tariffs that are in place right now are going to affect metal and other materials that are going to go into the grandstand construction. I'm not an economist. I can't predict how that's going to affect, construction right now, but those are the types of things that can trickle into a project. Other things include subsurface conditions, soft soils, things we dig up underground. We don't have an x-ray machine, so we can't inspect every little inch and pebble that's under the field, and we may find something that's soft. It may have been wrecked because water has gotten in there over the years. We may have to spend extra time fixing it. These are the intangibles that we have to allow for within reasonable planning. So those are some of the things that Ms. Sullivan had alluded to.
George, can you just explain who you are?
Sure, of course. I'm George Duthie. I'm a principal architect with FEHD Architects in Ewing Township, architects for the Westfield Board of Education. I just want to, and I'm not a civil engineer. I've done a lot of track and turf projects in my day. They take a long time. Lots of things can happen in construction. And the thing I want to just point out to everybody is we have clauses in the contracts that lawyers work on, okay? They have requirements for weather delays based upon the construction industry law, accepted standards and things like that. But at the end of the day, folks, if it rains a lot, if we have the deluge rains, and I'm talking about days where we had almost 2 inches of rain, okay? It's very hard to recover from that sometimes. You don't lose a day. You lose 3 days. You lose a week. It depends on the work you're doing. It depends on what's going on. On the projects I worked on this past summer, we could not catch a break. I just think everybody needs to think about that. Other types of things happen. Construction, lots of things happen. Lots of unforeseen, unpredictable, sometimes things occur. Prudence dictates that we have to think about that now. We have to think about that before we start the project, not while it's underway. It's too late. If it starts pouring rain, hurricane comes through, we get the deluge rains, or something else occurs, we're going to have a problem on our hands. And it's fine to say what the contract has in it, what the lawyers are going to do, $500 a day, liquidated damages, whatever it is. It's not going to make a difference at the end of the day because the project physically can't be worked on, okay? Just think about that. That's the only comment I really wanted to make to you. And so whenever we do a project like this, we always caution clients, and the cautions are different depending on the type of work we're doing, of the pitfalls that can occur, okay? Just think about that, please.
And the counsel that the board received to adjust the dates from what was originally disclosed to us as a very aggressive timeline to start with was based on the weather patterns of the last year, correct? Was that the primary reason that that you counseled us? In other words, we had the benefit of hindsight, 20/20 hindsight. We saw what happened, and we know now that if we had started on May 1st, we likely wouldn't be finished, correct?
If we had the same kind of summer we had this year.
If we had the summer like we
That's
had
the
last
point,
year, which
right.
no one could have predicted, by
Right.
the way.
Started May,
Yeah.
what direction is that? If we had started May 9th.
Exactly.
The summer like the year before? Did we look at that?
Yeah, actually,
How about the year before that? Is in other words, you talk
Ron,
about...
why don't you come to the microphone and say your name and address, please?
Ron Maleo, 1310 Francis Terrace. Climate change. Don't know much about it. Don't know that I agree with it. He spoke of it. You're talking about last summer, record rain. What about the summer before? 2015, 2014. Do we know what the summer's going to be like next year? No. But you're going off of one summer? I don't think that's an accurate assessment.
Gretchen. I want to reiterate what the professionals have said. Rob Garrison, I work with the Laborers International Union. Our members are the ones that are in the construction industry that do these turf fields, that do this type of work. And I will tell you, it's not just one summer. Last year, the issue was rain. And when there's a lot of rain, our members don't work, construction can't be done. The summer before and 2 summers before that, there was crazy heat waves.
Yeah,
where there were about 15 days during the summer last year, give or take, approximately the same amount the year before that and 2 years before that, where our members weren't working because there was some sort of weather condition, whether it's rain, whether it's heat, whether it's a mix of both. And as someone who works in the industry and as someone who serves on this board, I would love to be able to say, let's move it to May and let's have the same sort of schedule that we had last time around. But last year did prove that it's not a viable option and it's not the best option that we have. And our professionals, we rely on them greatly. And I appreciate all the comments and emails that were sent, comments tonight, I'm sure more comments that are going to be made. We listened to those. We had more meetings, and it's not a decision that we're just making lightly. It's not a decision that's just based on one summer. It's based on, Mr. Duthie's been here, I don't know how many years in this district, 15 plus years, the combined experience in all the districts. It's not just one summer. I can assure you it's not just, we've mentioned this past summer because that's when this project was supposed to start, and it didn't for contract reasons, and if it had, what the experience would have been this year using this summer as the experience. But every summer there's something that's going on, and you have to work that into a schedule when you're looking at work such as this. It's a huge undertaking.
I think Mike was asked.
Michael Vecito, 201 Clifton Street. You know, I'm not a civil engineer, but I'm an engineer too. And all I can say is, look, you can't base information, as Ron said, on one summer. You have to base your information on data and statistics, real information. So I guess my question is, and maybe what I think we're all asking is, use real data, not just what happened last week, last month, or the last quarter. Use real data and real information and make your assessment. And see if you can stretch maybe a little bit further. Maybe it's 4 weeks, maybe it's 2 weeks, but a little bit further. A little bit further will help the team and the kids who give so much every day so that they can perform on the athletic field or the track. So I think that's what we're asking, right? We're just saying, hey, you can't use that little bit of information to predict, because I can easily say the same thing. I can say everything might go wrong and we're going to need another month. I can also say everything might go well and it's going to finish 2 weeks ahead. There's just as good a likelihood as that if I use my engineering training. Thank you.
Good evening. Name is Scott Salzer, 141 Harrison Avenue. I got a little bit of a speech I actually prepared. I didn't know we were fielding these things, but just grant me 2 minutes. My name is Scott Salzer. I'm here tonight as a father of 2 great Westfield student athletes. My only real question tonight is why. I myself am a contractor in New York City. Spend a lot of my time estimating, bidding, leveling contracts daily. That being said, in all of my 30-plus years, I've never had a client volunteer to adjust the schedule from a contract timeline I've already agreed to. This new timeline only seems to provide the contractor with a large safety net regarding his proposed completion date. And by the way, as far as the $500 a day as his penalty if he doesn't reach this completion date on a $3 million contract, we normally get about 1%. We're usually about $10,000 a day. We'll go to maybe 15 on the next. $500 a day, I don't think the guy is really going to sweat that so much on this project. That's just my opinion, but that's part of the contract that I found a little odd. So once again, I find myself consistently asking why. Why would the Board of Representatives we voted into office decide to change the contractor's construction timeline at the expense of our children's education, safety, and training? This contractor seems to have done his homework, as all good contractors do. He factored in lost time associated with weather, lead times, materials, and a percentage of the unknown, while guaranteeing completing the job on time. He even states, and I know what you guys are saying, that he's running late already, but in this contract he stated 6 separate times that he's never missed a completion date. He's also said in his 22 years, he's never been wrong about the weather. 22 years we're giving him, but yet we're factoring in what we think might be a rough schedule. So once again, I'm questioning why. Why would we pay for busing as well as inconvenience 270 kids just to make this contract easier? And as a father of a senior that's here tonight, he's a football and track athlete that is being recruited to sprint in college, I find myself dreading the cost of him losing his last spring season. Not only will it affect him emotionally, but also could impact his recruitment potential. My junior, however, on the other hand, will have to weigh his option of sitting out this spring season to guarantee it doesn't affect his most critical academic year. So I'm putting the contract aside for a second, and once again I ask, why? Why would you burden these kids any more than we already have to? The original construction schedule is the best schedule for everyone. So I could see any reason to deviate from that plan. Even the contractor doesn't seem to have a problem with it. And if I had to choose who to add pressure to, it would be the contractor, not our children. The safety and well-being of these students should be paramount. Running at night in the dark in a town not yet specified doesn't seem like a solid plan. And actually, you mentioned before that the actual final planning isn't actually in concrete. We have no idea what we're doing with this additional track. We have no idea how many buses we will actually finally need. I know we're talking about the throwers staying in town. But if the board really doesn't have a concrete plan in place for this alternate plan to keep some of the kids in town, how can you vote on it tonight? I mean, shouldn't there be a little more information first before we actually move forward to vote yes?
We can't finalize a plan unless we have a date.
Can't finalize a plan for which?
What plan?
We can't finalize a plan unless we have a date
The plan for the construction of the field or the temporary?
for the athletes. Everybody's waiting for the date. We can't finalize a contract, we can't finalize an ulterior, the plan for the athletes until we vote and finalize the date. Is that correct? Everybody's waiting for us, right?
Yes, yes.
Right, well, once again, we can make your planning a lot easier.
The 2 schools are waiting on us.
We finalized it on August 29th.
Yeah.
And then, out of the concerns that were brought, and we heard and we listened, we went back to the drawing board. But the coaches and Sandy and Derek can't start finalizing plans with other schools until we give them a date on which to start working. So it's not like we can wait for a plan and then pick a date. We need to pick a date. We don't have a contract until we pick a date.
But even if I ask you guys, just honestly, as contractor, or you work with labor, have you ever have clients come up to you and offer?
We
It
did
wasn't
not
the
extend.
client
We did
who
not
asked to move the
wait. We
date.
did not
Who asked
extend
to
the
move the
time of the
date?
contract. The timeline has not changed. We changed.
I know that,
from-
but I'm saying the start
We
date.
changed the start date a month earlier, but the completion date is also a month earlier.
But whose
So-
request was that?
It was not the request of the contractor. We knew all along that the schedule that was built into this project was very aggressive. So last year, we were prepared to move forward starting May 8th, but I sat at this table many nights and said, that's a very aggressive timeline. The completion date was August 31st. So then, to give you an indication of the world that we live in, which is different than not public bidding world, we were held out from doing the project this past summer because of the third bidder, who had no really standing in this project at all. But because he
Yeah, I get that. I
he
saw
took us
that
to
whole,
court
yeah.
and did,
Mhm.
so that's, you can't compare our world to what you do in construction. We're bound by laws that we have to follow, so I hear what you're saying about what you do, but that doesn't apply to us.
Oh, we bid
So-
public projects constantly. What I'm
Okay,
saying
but-
is, I mean, we know that lowest bidder, I get all of that. What I'm saying is, nobody on my end has ever cared if I can't make that date. My date
We
is set in
didn't
stone.
extend his time. We gave us a cushion so that
But I'm
if the
saying
weather.
you're worried, you moved our time, you moved the timeline back to give yourself a cushion, and I get that, I really do. I think it
For
is,
the
I think it is an
district.
aggressive schedule. But nobody cares when I have to take an aggressive schedule. I bid the project accordingly because I know I might have to hire more labor, I might have to push weekends, I might have to work nights. Like this stuff, nobody has ever cared.
Well, we
if
don't
I-
care
if I
for the
have-
contractor. We care for the school district. We're not doing this for
But
the
it seems like we're adjusting
contractor.
for the contractor.
No, we're adjusting for the school district so that the school district will, what was the advice from our high school administration was that it would be better for the school district to have a cushion for this project because of many different things that could cause it to be delayed. And because we know that that timeline from whether it's April 8th to July 31st or May 8th to August 31st is very aggressive. So the school district wanted to have the cushion on the spring side. That was why we're not doing this at all to ease any burden on the contractor, nor do we plan to ease any burden on the contractor.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still losing you on that one just a little bit, only because you could hire as many man hours. It's just man hours, man days. You could hire as many men as you, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, he could get 10 more guys if he ran into a problem, if he's running behind, it's his responsibility to be inconvenienced, not really ours. And that's just I found it odd. I'm not a lawyer, I can't
It's
attest
not
to.
legalese, I guess, and again, I don't know if we're not connecting after I get finished, is that the completion date was moved up a month and the timing was moved up a month. So the
Right.
timing, in a sense, you're still within that same time frame, but based upon recommendations from the athletic department at the high school, based upon the engineer, based upon the architect, was to grab that time frame and to do it within that time frame. And again, it may have been, again, as we went back, too aggressive from that, okay, going to March, why, I agree with you.
Mhm.
That was our discussion of why am I adding that, if you want to say that extra month, that extra time frame in. But if we go back to the April and we go to July now we're within that box and there's not an extension of dates.
Right, but once again, I don't know. Listen, we could go around and around. I don't know why we're adding dates on, and I know that
But
you
we're
were still.
not.
No, you're not. I know you're not. But you're giving yourself a cushion in case you have to.
Correct.
I get that. You're preparing for the worst. But on the other end, like as a contractor, nobody has ever cared if I'm falling behind, I have to go out of my pocket. I'm not asking the client to hire buses, send kids to other towns, or worry about inconveniencing. Listen. At the end of the day, the kids, the taxpayer, they're the client. I know you're not saying it, but that's the client. So the client is being inconvenienced to add a cushion for the contractor. Right. It's odd. I've never, and I wish. No, I mean, and I get it. You guys want to make sure that the field is open because then it screws up a whole nother thing in the fall. I get that. But at the initial start of it, you shouldn't care about. That should not be your factor. If it worked out perfectly for all of the athletes and the students, I get it. It's a tough world, but.
But here's what I want to say to you is that I shouldn't care, but because now I'm hearing, to me, I'm starting to hear two different things. I shouldn't care, but I should care.
No, you shouldn't care about the contractor.
No, but
Worry about making his
remember,
end
it's not
date.
just about the contractor. We're talking about, there's a lot of, again, the logistics, everything else. It's not just, the contractor's still in that same time frame. The contractor's still in that same time frame. There's no difference, all right?
I'm with you on the X amount of days.
But that's what
I
I'm
get
saying,
that.
is that and no one's sitting there, no one's extended it. I'm just saying, it's like, I shouldn't care. Well, obviously we didn't, because we said, okay, fine, March is not the right time. April's the time frame, April till the end of July. And again, there are logistics that are involved with the things that you can say the contractor, everything else. And a lot of, and Danny, you can correct me, is that a lot of these contracts, my family's in construction also, okay? A lot with the contractors say, well, I've never been late. Well, maybe I've never paid a penalty, but I could have been late, and that's how they're judging. They're judging because that I've never had to do this, I've never had to pay the penalty, I've never been, in a sense, somebody could have adjudicated against me, I've never had a case go against me, but I could have been 3 months late on something.
All right,
So-
let's move on.
Okay.
Well, and as Bill mentioned, there's 10 different reasons why a contract, or why we can be legitimately delayed. It doesn't impact the contractor at all, but it does impact us on the back end.
Okay.
I think some of our student athletes wanted to speak, and we got kind of sidetracked. No? I mean, you're welcome to come up.
Please do.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Hahn, 1317 Summit Avenue, and I am a captain for the Westfield cross country team, and I've been a member of the Westfield track team for the past 4 years. I'd like to thank the board for giving us time to speak tonight and appreciate the concessions the district has offered pushing the construction of the track to April. But we need more. My track experience has been invaluable, from the relationships I've developed to the work ethic it has instilled in me. I have become disciplined, a better student, and it has made me the person I am today. We are more than just student athletes. We are volunteers, employees, and more. Later practices will force many of us to abandon our other extracurriculars or make the hard choice to choose. Many track athletes are made by accident. We come in for a season thinking to do it just to pass the time, but we stay. We fall in love with the sport and our track community. It would be a detriment to see many people not even consider joining our team because of the inconvenience an April construction may hold. The team will hurt from losing the Blue Devil Classic track meet, our biggest fundraiser of the year. We will be forced to compete with other popular track meets at the time to attract teams, hurting our funds. Not only will our team lose, but people will miss out on a wonderful experience like mine. Please push the construction date to May. Many of our athletes' seasons will be near complete. Save our season, but also the seasons of athletes who have potential to have an amazing experience but don't know it yet. Thank you.
Hi, I'm James McCutcheon, 162 Harrison Avenue. I'm sure a lot of you and the board have gotten lots of emails and have heard lots from Jim McCutcheon. I hate to break it to you, but there's another one of us. So I grew up listening to my dad, who was a runner in college. And I heard his stories, and I grew up, I want to be a runner in high school. And that's been my goal for as long as I can remember. And I'm here to tell you that that's an anomaly. Most people don't go through their lives wanting to run track and field. You see that with football and basketball and all different sports, but most of our best athletes happen by accident, like Dehan said so well. And one of the key strengths of our team is that we don't make cuts. So many people who otherwise wouldn't join the team end up coming on the team because they want to be a part of something, and they wind up being some of the best athletes we've ever had. For starters, a good friend of mine who graduated 2 years ago by the name of Aditya Singh. His freshman year, he was very overweight, and he's very proud that he was only ever the second to last guy in any race. Never last, but he was second to last. But he was not a very good athlete to begin with. But he made the commitment, and his sophomore year, he worked out every day, he ate better, and by his senior year, he was a captain, and he was the fastest kid on the team. Another great example is a senior who graduated 3 years ago, Paul Jakovic. We lovingly call him Tall Paul. If you saw the guy, you'd understand. Very tall. But his freshman year, similar situation. He was very overweight, not a very good athlete. And through his years on the team, he did get better. But more than anything, running became a part of his life. He is, to this day, still an avid runner. He comes to our practices when it's his off season, though he never achieved the athletic heights that someone like Aditya might have met. Paul still found a team. He found a family. And throughout the rest of his life, he's going to be a runner. Another good friend of mine, Matt Musel, you might have heard his name. He was a very successful runner. He was a captain last year. His freshman year, he came up for cross country. Didn't really have a great, he was good. Then winter, he did basketball. Came up for spring and ran a 4:35 mile, which was one of the fastest mile times a freshman had ever run on the team. So these guys all found their success in one way or another. So when we talk about doing these renovations in April, like Dehan said, a lot of these guys are going to be the ones who are going to have to make the hard decision between their grades and track. And I know you're saying we're going to try and minimize the time, so that'll be just an hour. But I'm telling you right now, just an hour, that's a lot. I mean, you just have to look around this room. I saw T-Chen earlier sitting on his computer doing his sophomore history honors outline. I saw Jack Moran's doing his A-push outline. I saw people in the back, I think, doing physics. we're all here because we want to support our team and we want to move this back, but we can't sit through here and spend our time just listening because we have to get stuff done. And just an hour, that's a really important hour. So, like Mr. Salter was saying, it seems that when we're moving this contract up, we're giving the contractor a cushion. And it seems to me that you're valuing the contractor over guys like Adidia, over guys like Paul, over guys like Musil, and over guys and girls that are sitting here today. So if we do this renovation, a lot of these athletes that don't see themselves becoming varsity athletes or don't see themselves being a real team member and are just doing it to do something, these are the guys that can be some of our top athletes and some of the guys who will have their lives changed by running. And by making this in April, we're saying see ya to a lot of these guys. And we're losing a lot of potential on this team. So I think if we move this back to May, this problem seems to be erased. And as the Board of Education, I think that your value should be in our education, our well-being, the children, us students, not in the contractor. And, oh, well, he might not be able to do it in time. That's his job. He has to do it in time. And yes, I understand that there are complications, but at the end of the day, that's his responsibility. You shouldn't be putting that burden on us. And you shouldn't be telling a lot of the kids who may not have a lot of potential, or may not think that they have a lot of potential, what I meant to say, who really do have a lot of potential. I don't think we should be giving them the hard decision. I think the hard decision should lie on the contractor because that's what he signed up for. We signed up for one reason or another, a team, a community where we can work as athletes. And for some people, that blossoms into a lot more. I've seen that firsthand with some very close friends of mine. And at the end of the day, I think moving this back to May, it's the sort of thing that the Board of Education should value, is our students, our student athletes, and not giving someone who signed up for this sort of problem. Instead of giving them the leeway, our focus should be on us student athletes. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cooper Brennan, 571 Cumberland Street, and as many others have said, I'm a senior at Westfield High School. I'm also a captain of the cross-country team and a member of the spring and winter track team and have been for almost 4 years now. James discussed the more effects that it would have on the athletes, and I'm here to discuss the effects that this would have on our lives in general. And I'm aware of the fact that you put forth a deal to compromise over the date being moved to April, a deal which I am thankful that you have even had just considered to moving it and not being stubborn and kind of pushing for it. I could never be grateful that you would even think about moving it. However, I simply do not see the issue with having the start date being the original agreed upon start date in May. The track team alone would have already been giving up all of its varsity championship season to the renovation, but nonetheless it was agreed as that would have the least impact on the majority of the team. Now I have with me in this folder to express the opinion of not only just the track team, but of the entire school. And I can say that I have never been more proud in anything that this team or this school has done. In this folder, me, along with many of the other members of this team, went around the school into all of our classes every day for only 1 week to preach our opinion and our situation. And I am proud to say that we got almost 500 signatures from kids of all different grades, of all different sports, over 10 sports, and some kids who didn't even do sports, but they all sympathized with our situation, and they said, that's not fair. You should not be denied your season that you work so hard for and that you desperately want, and you've been dreaming from your freshman year to say, I want to run my last race on that track or play my last game on that field, and then suddenly be denied that fact. And I will reiterate some of the drastic changes that will happen to hundreds of kids like myself in this school if you choose to bus almost all of us out of town every day. First, the team that is over 200 kids would be separated, pretty much not becoming a team anymore, and would be transported to other towns. And then we would possibly have to wait for the other town's track team to finish their practice, and only then would we have to practice, from which we would have to wait to be driven home from an unfamiliar town. This could mean at least 3 hours less to do not only our school requirements, such as homework and studying, but also to take care of our basic essential needs as people, such as eating, bathing, or sleeping. And a little analogy, if we are like the student body and the athletes here are like a plant or a flower, the board of ed is like the sun. You're like the essential to our development, and without which would cause us to fall apart and cease to bloom. So you, the Board of Education, are responsible for providing the most prosperous environment in order for the kids and for these kids to receive the best education they can. And clearly this situation is leading down a road which will damage not only our athletics but our education. And you, as your name states, should not stand to see this happen to us. If you truly stand by your word that there is no bias or favoritism towards certain sports in this school, then you will not let this happen. And you would deliver to each and every sport equal opportunity and justice. I am, along with many members of this team, kind of insulted at the fact that the school would already take a portion of our season, which we agreed to, and then tell us that we are asking for too much to reinstate the original agreed-upon start date of the construction project, when they are telling us that they're going to take more of our season away from us, when we already agreed to take a large portion of it away. And in terms of the track team, for our size, we're a pretty unnoticed team in the school. Like, they don't talk about us all the time on the announcements and things like that, and we're okay with that. We don't ask for much. We don't ask for recognition. We don't ask for people to come to our meets and cheer for us. We don't ask for things like that. But we should have the right, and all we want is the ability to have a strong team and to practice together in unity on our track. And if you follow through with splitting us up every day to other towns, then we're not a team anymore, and we can't do anything to the best of our ability, and that's your main goal, is so that we can do whatever we can to the best of our ability through athletics and through education. And so you, the Board of Education, are the ones, everyone in this room and outside of this room who do athletics, we are looking up to you, students and parents alike, to save our season, but more importantly and most of all, to save our education. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam Shavik, 401 Otisco Drive, and I'm the spring fields captain.
Hi, I'm Lauren Triarsi, 214 Gulf Edge, and I am the winter and spring hurdles, jumps, and sprints captain.
Hi, I'm Marie Coughlin, 755 Wynya Ave, and I'm the spring sprinter captain.
Hi, I'm Emma Hamilton, 626 Lenox Avenue, and I am the spring track distance captain.
As spring track captains, we wanted to speak together and represent the girls' spring track team as a whole. We want to make it brief so we don't take up too much time. We feel as though it is unfair treatment to the 100 participants on our team. Both academically and athletically, we feel as though we will be put at a disadvantage. We hope you take all the athletes' and parents' concerns into consideration when voting on this compromise. That's what I have written. Now I have something else I have to say that I did not write down until about 2 minutes ago when it came up. So, as we were saying, that not every athlete needs to be bused to a field. As the jumps and hurdles captain, I will say that many other students that compete in the same events, especially in fields and hurdles, must be at a track every day. And I know you have a busing situation, but it's really going to take a toll on our academic and athletic competition. Also, we already have compromised to go to April, and like our plan last year was May, which already is a lot for us because especially as a hurdler and my relay team, we were about a second away from qualifying for the national championships last year. And that is in late June, which we would be bused for 2 months, even if it was at the beginning of May. And even though May is still a compromise for us, and there is a cushion for the fall sports, it's taking away far more from us than it is from the fall sports. So.
We would also just like to say thank you for giving us the chance to speak our opinion and voice our opinions on the renovation. For all of us, spring track has been such an important part of our lives. It gives us a stability, and it also lets us do what we love with the people we love and with the friendships that we've formed. However, these very reasons for why we enjoy track so deeply will be taken away just from the expense of putting in a new track during our season.
This doesn't solely affect us four, but for the 100 girls, an equivalent number of boys who are part of the spring track team. What this means is that it will be extremely inconvenient to do something we enjoy, spend time with friends, and take time to clear our minds after working rigorously in school. Additionally, as captains, it is our job to unify the team, encourage students to support their teammates, practicing the same and different events. With the team scattered in various locations, it will be challenging to bring the team together. One last reason. We are here tonight taking time to discuss this matter when we could be completing our homework. The project, even though it hasn't commenced yet, is already beginning to affect us academically. We recognize that these are only a few of the reasons why the Keller renovation should be moved, but we recognize that Friends of Westfield Track have voiced other concerns, as well as various members of the community and our team, and we feel that the ones just mentioned are of the utmost importance. So, on behalf of our teammates and all supporters of spring track and field, we urge you to push back the proposed start date to May. We look forward to a fantastic season this spring.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Brianna Hatch, 410 North Chestnut Street. 242. That's how many hours, on average, a spring track athlete spends at Gary Keller Stadium on the track. 12 weeks, 72 days, 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, with added time for home dual meets and Blue Devil Classic and Union County relays. 242 hours. That means that just during spring track seasons, I have spent 726 hours on the track at Keller, and I expected to spend all 968. There are roughly 250 to 300 spring track athletes at Westfield High School, which means that we make up about 13 to 15% of the student body. And while we have more members than any other sport at the high school, while we represent a larger percentage of the student body than any other extracurricular, we don't ask for much. We don't ask for stands full of cheering fans. We don't ask for trainers to stand right next to the track as we compete. We rarely even ask for new uniforms. But the one thing we do ask for is something that seems so blatantly obvious in its necessity to our program that it's ridiculous to imagine we could ever exist without it: a track. As the track and field team, we ask for a track and a field in the same place, and not even one that's specifically our own. It's shared by other spring sports, so we're not the only ones asking for it. But the bottom line is, you can't even say the phrase spring track without the word track. If you remove the track at the beginning of or even in the middle of the spring season, you risk removing much more: a reputation, a legacy, a home. You risk destroying the reputation of the Westfield track and field teams, as we would be unable to host Union County Relays and Blue Devil Classic, two meets which have given the spring track program at WHS a name and a reputation as a legitimate program. If we sacrifice 1 year of not hosting these meets, we could lose our ability to ever host them again. You risk destroying a legacy. Each year, new records are set by this team. Each year, races are won by this team, trophies and medals are collected by this team. Each year, this team continues to uphold the legacy of champions, the legacy of excellence, the legacy of diligent effort that has been put in place for years. And we don't even ask for recognition. If you remove the track during the spring track season, our training will be drastically disrupted. Our ability to live as healthy and successful students-athletes will be drastically disrupted. If we are bused to different tracks throughout the county for late evening practices or even afternoon practices, we as the students will lose part of the already limited time we have for sleep, homework, and other activities, and trust me, we can't bear to lose any more of that. Track athletes are some of the most dedicated people in the school because we learn from our training that hard work and determination leads to success. What you put in is what you get out. So we are involved in more extracurriculars than one. We take multiple honors and AP classes. We participate in various activities outside of the school. Losing the easy accessibility of our own track, losing the hours it will take to commute and adjust to the nighttime training schedule that disrupts our eating and sleeping and studying habits, that will not lead to success. The effort we put in will be affected by all these external factors, and we will not get out the success we deserve. The success that upholds Westfield Track and Field's legacy. We risk losing athletes whose parents won't let them sacrifice the hours. We risk losing coaches who can't sacrifice the extra hours. We risk losing so many key factors, too many key factors, that contribute to this team's victories and to our responsibility to uphold our legacy. If you remove the track during the spring season, you are removing a home. And I know that's not as important as the logistical issues, the cost for the buses and the disrupted schedules and the lost hours, but it's important to us, to the student athletes who make up this team, and it's important to our season. Part of the consistent success associated with this sport comes from the fact that while most see it as individual, this sport is the purest representation of a team sport. We are motivated by the cheering of our teammates, by the daily encouragement at practice from our teammates, by the prospect of being together as one massive force all the time. The busing plan threatens to split up our team in multiple locations, some on the roads, some on the fields, some at different tracks. This physical separation will hinder our ability to bond as a team, to form that unstoppable force that excels in competition. Once separate, we lose part of our power and part of our potential. And without a home to host dual meets and Blue Devil Classic, we lose our foundation of spirit, our foundation of motivation, our foundation of our team itself. Like I said, we spring track and field athletes don't ask for much, but we do ask for the construction to start on May 8th, the originally proposed start date for last year's construction plan. We appreciate you pushing back the start date to April 8th, but you are still sacrificing 4 weeks of our competitive season, our championship season, the most important weeks of our season, for 4 weeks of preseason in the fall, when athletes will not be in school and therefore will have more time and flexibility to train elsewhere. Last year, the end of regular competition ended with a season ender meet on May 30th, and our championship season goes into mid-June. A May 8th starting date would therefore put us still at a disadvantage, but its effects would not be as detrimental as an April 8th starting date. We simply ask for the renovation of Keller Stadium to not hinder our season, to not replace or tear up our reputation, our legacy, and our home. We simply ask for as many of those 242 hours on the track as we can get. Thank you.
Jake Salter, 141 Harrison Avenue. I'm actually a football player and a track captain for the boys sprinting team. I would just like to take a moment and reread the mission statement that is projected above. And before you vote tonight, I would just like to make sure that you guys are fulfilling this mission statement before you vote. Thank you very much.
Will McGlynn, 18 Tamaulipas Way, Westfield, New Jersey. So every other person that's talked to you guys tonight has been a senior, captain, just dedicated team member, a senior. And I don't know, one of the things I just figured I should point out is anyone in here who is an honors student or takes at least 2 honors or AP classes, please raise your hand. That's pretty much everyone in the room. Bree Hatch, who spoke earlier, is our... Bree Hatch, who spoke earlier, is actually our school president. She's very humble. I'm sure she wouldn't say that, but she's our school president. Last year, Rob Brown, another track athlete, was our school president. Track athletes go beyond just track. It's a lot of intelligent people, a lot of smart people. I'm not going to pretend to understand everything about contracting or engineering or any of that. I'm a sophomore in high school. I have no idea what any of this means. So you guys are all very smart people, and I'm sure you can all figure all logistics or anything like that. I'm speaking as a member of the track team. I'm not going to understand all of that. I apologize if that's an inconvenience, but this is where I'm coming from. Jake Salter, sitting right there, ran a 48.6400. It's one of the fastest times in Westfield High School history. Our distance team this year won the Shore Coaches Invitational last weekend. That is the biggest meet in New Jersey, biggest invitational in New Jersey. I could stand up here the entire time and list to you achievements that we have, and I'm not going to do that because it's 9:40, and we all have homework to do, like everyone said, and everyone here is, smart person and a dedicated person, and I don't know. I just feel like everyone here should understand that and know that. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Ava Murillo, 800 Forest Avenue. So hi, my name is Ava Murillo, and I'm one of our cross-country and winter track captains for this year. While the fall and winter seasons might seem like some of the times where I thrive, I owe all of my successes and love for the sport and sense of family that I'm so lucky to experience every day to spring track. I joined this team sophomore year, and the spring season was all that I needed to prove how essential this sport is in my life. In the spring, our track is home to countless dual meets, championships, and our favorite meet of the year, the Blue Devil Classic. While our team dynamic is so strong that you could take us to the middle of Vermont and we'd still manage to light up every room we're in, nothing beats the energy surrounding our home track. To me, this track is where I found my place in high school. Knowing that others won't be able to experience that but I had my first season is just unfair. While the logistics behind this plan will be extremely difficult to accomplish, our culture this spring will never be how it is in years past. And then I have one more thing. I got it. Okay. Sorry, come here. So we have a question for the board. Westfield puts education above athletics. It will be challenging for students to fulfill their job as students when they arrive home late from practice and have little time to do work. Do you truly believe that by limiting the amount of time students have to complete homework, you are honoring this philosophy?
I have a much fuller response, so I'm happy to answer that question. I want to give an opportunity for everybody to speak, and then I think the board members are going to have statements on their own. So
Okay.
I think what we do every day tries to honor our mission statement.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike Hammer, 97 Chester Way. Two kids in high school. One is here, Alexis. Say hi, Alexis. She's a junior on the track team. My son is a freshman. And while we're talking about the focus being on the students, I think it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the parents. There's 400 some odd parents representative of the 200 plus student athletes. These are single parents. These are dual income parents. These are working parents. These are parents that will do anything for their student athlete. That said, we get into a routine. We know the routine heading into the spring. I've done it already for 2 years for Alexis, my wife and I. We juggle. We coordinate. We ask. We beg. We prod. We say, hey, can you help out? That's the effect too. And I see the head shaking. But the fact of the matter is that there are families that have young kids at home that will now have to get out of the house to get their child at the school hours after they usually would. That's dinner time. That's tub time. That's other time that is really valuable. That's family time. And I don't see that being taken into consideration either. Yes, the focus is the student athlete, first and foremost. Brilliant student athletes that have spoken from the heart. And honestly, I feel that if you don't decide to push it to May, I just couldn't imagine you with your conscience being able to do that with all these students speaking here. That's first. Second comment, I want to focus on my son, freshman. He's thinking about going and trying out for track. He'll make it. That said, that's not why I'm bringing him up. Last year, he grew 5 inches, right? Big growth spurt. My son, his shoe grew maybe 2.5, 3 inches, okay? So if I use that logic and apply it to the way you're looking at last year's rainfall, then my wife and I should go out and buy him size 11, 12 shoes, and we should go buy him about, I don't know, men's triple extra large in anticipation of him growing another 5 inches and his foot going another 2.5. So maybe we'll buy him a California King in 2 years. I don't know. But I'm making a joke in a way, but the logic that I've heard is we have hindsight of looking at last year's rainfall. And that's what we're using to go ahead and push this project because we don't know if it's going to rain, but we do know it did last year. So I don't know if I'm going to go out and buy this new shoes and stuff for my son, but if I use that logic, that's what my wife and I will do. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Joshua Pingasov. I'm a 9th grade student at Westfield High School. I want to draw some attention to a lot of the consequences that are going to happen to students. Again, if we go to a different track, we're going to have to get home at a much later time, and people need to eat dinner, do homework, and study for tests. When they actually do this, they're going to go to bed at a ridiculous time, and that's really going to affect their sleep schedule. And that's also going to affect it on the academic level as well. Because if you don't get enough sleep, you won't do as well in school. And that's therefore violating the mission statement. On the mission statement, it states it educates all students to reach their highest potential as productive, well-balanced, and responsible citizens. And that's it.
Hi, my name is Will Logia. I'm a junior, and I've run ever since I started high school all 3 seasons. I just want to point out that Josh, who just came up to speak, is a freshman at Westfield High School, and he has never run spring track before for the high school. And this brings up a concern for me because he has no idea what it's like, but he already has a concern that it's going to affect his academic life. So there are people, and Josh isn't alone, that are very concerned about what's going to happen to them if the track isn't there. And I've talked to people, teammates of mine, friends of mine, that don't even know if they're going to be able to run spring track because of this conflict that's being brought up. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Second thing I wanted to say was just what this sport means to me and my experience joining this team. So when you sign up for this team, there's a very simple promise that's made to you. And that promise is that if you work hard and put your best foot forward every day, do everything you can to get better, you will have success. But there needs to be resources provided for you in order to have that success. Coaching, that's an extremely important resource. We have that. From my experience, the coaching is phenomenal here. But spring track, as Brianna brought up, it's in the name. I mean, it's extremely important to have there for us, and it's a resource. We need it. It's the track. Right now, in the fall, we're practicing every day for cross country. We make our way by the track. We see what's going on. And on that field, almost every day, games are going on for the different sports that take place in fall. There's many of them. And I think to myself, okay, here's a soccer game going on the field right now. Nothing else is going on that field. There are other fall sports. They're finding a way to practice somewhere else. They're not getting bussed here and there. For us, we don't say, oh, the track's being used right now. Let's just go to the other track in Westfield. There is none. It's going to be very difficult for us, and I think what all my friends, teammates, parents have said have made it very clear how hard this is going to be, and it's going to have a detrimental effect to our team. And I'll bring it back to what I said first. Josh, he has concerns. He hasn't even done it yet. Thank you.
My name is Ronnie Maleo, and my address is 1310 Francis Terrace. And I just want to say one point. I don't want to be up here for too long and repeat what everybody else has said. But many people have said that what they do is they go to school, they go to track practice, and then they do homework, and then they go to sleep. But there's people do other things after practice as well. I know for me, I tutor after practice many days of the week. I do many church activities after school as well, or after practice as well. And I would not be able to do these things if the practice was delayed by at most 1 hour. Even if that, I would not be able to do these things. I'd have to cancel on people. I wouldn't be able to tutor. That doesn't just affect me, that affects other people. I wouldn't be able to participate in the church as well. That would affect people as well. So I just wanted to put that point out there.
Hi, my name is Mary Claire Gavelber. I live at 409 Lenox Avenue. I'm just trying to understand. So we're going to remove August from the construction time frame, and we're going to remove August from the time frame and add April. So we're taking away a month where there are no students in school and replacing it with April. One of the most demanding months academically for school, for these kids. It's when they take APs, it's when they're finishing junior research projects. It's just a very, very difficult time of year. So it just seems somewhat inconsistent to be doing that. My other question that just keeps coming back to me is, what if this runs into September? Okay, so September is 11 months from now. Can't we have a contingency plan in place for playing games away? Those teams that are practicing now have fields to practice on. There's only one team that's practicing on that field every day. So if on Monday we have football practicing, on Tuesday we have soccer practicing. So football can't be there on Tuesday. They're going somewhere else already. So I don't understand why track has to carry all of that burden. Why, if we're asking the track kids to give up April and May and part of June, why can't we ask those kids to potentially give up some of September? Thank
you. Anybody else? So,
oh, no, one more.
Yeah, come on in.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah. Hi, my name is Joan Brennan, 571 Cumberland Street. I am thankful that you let us do this, and this is unfamiliar territory. Do you know where our kids are going? Yeah, I think I said at the beginning, we don't have, we have a sense. We have 2 locations in schools who have been identified offering their track and field. Scotch Plains, and Union, and I think that there's a third in the works. I know that they're going somewhere in Union County, but the logistics, the specific details, we do not have them. Nor would the board be involved in crafting those.
But yet you're asking us to give, and you're saying we need to consider what the contractor, we're giving him the benefits of weather and time and all those, but yet there's 200 children that we're busing, and you have parents in this audience who have no idea where their kids are going. You're making a decision on something that you don't even have all the information yourself to make. And I thought this was odd that I get letters like if a teacher is retiring, or there's a new one coming on, or we're having a dog in the school. And yet this whole thing, I didn't get anything. I find out that my child, along with hundreds of others, are going to be taken out and bused. We're not sure where. We'll figure that out. But yet you're asking us to be so considerate of this contract, the contractor, and yet 200 children, like really on tape, you're on tape right now saying that, well, we have to, give this guy this, this, we got to give him this timeline, this date. And yet you're sitting here admittedly saying, well, we don't exactly know where you're all going. We don't know, do you know if they're going to keep their field houses open to let them change? Who's ensuring that everyone's getting on there's so many other factors. Lighting, how can you possibly make a decision, something so huge for so many children that's affecting them not only physically but academically, which you are the Board of Ed? How can you make that decision? I just honestly think I'd love you to say no, or at least delay it till you can give us concrete, that you have that information. You're making that decision. Well, I can tell you, I know your kids are going here. We have a contract with this school saying they will do this to ensure the safety of your child. This is what we've done, so now can we vote? That's all I have to say.
Good evening, Sharon Stockwell, 100 Nelson Place. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I noticed that there's something that has not been brought up yet that I thought was very important to say, that we do have the largest team in the high school. We also do have the team that probably has the largest family legacies on it. This is a team that we have many families that have had several children go through the track program. Mrs. Brennan and the Brennans have had 3 children that have run in this program. Mr. McCutcheon has daughters that have run in this program. Many of us go back to Coach Hornish, when Coach Hornish was the full-time coach, the head coach of the girls cross-country team. I've had the distinct privilege of being in the track family for 8 consecutive years. I also served on the board, the Friends of Westfield Track Board, for 8 years, and was personally responsible for fundraising, merchandising. As you all know, we provide administrative and financial support to the team. I know that it was brought up earlier that we would not be able to have the Blue Devil Classic if the construction was underway. One of the things that we do is we provide for senior scholarships each year at the all athlete boosters dinner to 4 of our track seniors. We also provide a 5th partial scholarship that can be won by any student athlete on any team. We're very inclusive on our team. We do not cut. We take everyone onto our team, and I feel that we have a history of having many families that are legacy families. And as a parent whose children are at the school right now, my daughter graduated last year, I think it's out of respect for these families that you have listened to all of us, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you working on changing the date, but I really would ask you that you seriously consider moving it back to the original date of May. Thank you.
Mike Cohen, 1605 Boynton. I just, real quick, off the top of my head, the track program is the only program at the high school that, as far as I'm aware, that doesn't make any cuts. I'm not sure about football. I know soccer makes cuts. Okay. So you really have to think about, there are kids here who are, this is their one opportunity to play a sport, to participate. And it seems odd to me that this is like the one that you're gonna, potentially penalize, if you will. That's it.
So, Will McGlynn wonderfully took a minute to tell us a little bit about who the track people are. So I'm going to take a minute to tell you a little bit about who this board is. So first of all, I'm a mom. I'm a mom of athletes. I'm a mom of honor students. I'm a mom of kids who aren't either of those things. And everyone on this board is as well, with the exception of Brendan, who's an alumni. What?
Track alumni.
And a track alumni. We don't come to any decision lightly. And it's funny that I think, I've been on the board for 7 years, and you can't always anticipate the issues that are gonna cause intense reaction, right? Unfortunately, they're usually about facilities rather than curriculum or something, that really goes to the core of what we do. So I was a little surprised by the reaction to this, and let me tell you why. Because when we came back in August, as a board member, a volunteer, this is what I heard. I heard my engineer and my architect and my business administrator, all of whom had been involved in projects of this size and scope for many years, telling me, we can't get it done. We can't get it done on the timeline. So then what that then meant to the board is that we were gonna impact athletes somewhere, on one end or the other. Somebody was gonna get bused, somebody was gonna get displaced, somebody was gonna be put in an uncomfortable temporary position. Nobody's seasons were getting canceled, by the way. Nobody was not gonna be able to compete, but somebody was gonna be inconvenienced. So then we had a conversation, because we don't know. I'm a mom, I'm a lawyer, I go to work every day. I rely on my experts to then tell me, what does this look like? If we cancel, if we move it here, if we move it here. I rely on beloved coaches who represented to me, this is workable. We can make this happen. This is something that we can definitely do. I've been lucky enough to have kids go through, and I have friends who have kids that are on the track and field program, some of whom are in this room. And I know that you guys are special. I see it. And I know that you don't cut anybody. And I actually, kind of like somebody said earlier, like, what if the weather's perfect? I sort of saw it from that viewpoint. Personally, I was like, I think we have really resilient kids, and I think we have parents who support them, and I think that this is a workable plan. And then you guys came, and I heard what you guys were saying about the concerns about the academics. And that's what led me to compromise and move it by 5 weeks to reduce that impact. And that then one of the weeks would also be spring break, so it reduced it even a little bit more. And so I felt like we were being responsive and that we were listening, and I feel like we continue to listen. So I say all that not in defense of the decision that this board is going to make tonight. I say that so that you have some reflection on who we are. Please don't invoke our conscience. We do the best that we can for every single one, all the aspects of the things that we have to consider. And we hear you, and your primary concern is your kids. But I also believe that our kids are really fortunate in this district, and that this is an unfortunate situation for a really great renovation and a brand new track and field that's gonna happen. And I feel like there's a team in place who is nothing but about making this transition as easy as it can be for what it is. I don't know if any of the other board members want to say something before we move on to vote. I'd open the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I think it may be getting lost in the shuffle a little bit. We're not trying to make this move and to inconvenience, to impact our spring track athletes, to help our contractor. We're doing it because we, as board members, are charged by you guys who elect us to make the best decisions to help steer the district. Part of that is being responsible with the funds that are coming almost exclusively, as you well know, from your taxes. And so in doing that, we have to take the advice, as Gretchen said, of the people who know better than we do, because we are volunteers. We come from different kinds of fields. You know, this isn't our specialty. So we ask the people who know these things, who've lived through them before. And they're the ones who are telling us, we need more time. And then we talk to the people who work with our athletes most directly, with our principal, with our athletic director, with our coaches. And those are the people who have said to us, this is a good, workable way to make this happen. I understand you feel it keenly because this is your world. You know it, you live it. I get that. I have a kid who's on the team too. I understand. My older son was on the team too. And so I know the special bond that you guys have. I know how special this team is. I get it. But I also have to help participate in making a decision that's right for the whole district and everybody that's going to use what we hope is going to be a great renovated track and field that we're all going to be proud of. So that's also my concern tonight.
Yeah. So I graduated from Westfield High School 2007. Was on the track team 8 seasons. I think I did cross country one year. Lettered a couple times. I get it. I wanted, however possible, to impact track as little as possible, because it's where I come from. But we have so many conflicting obligations on the fall side, the spring side, field usage, everything else, as well as the massively increased scope of the project from what it was in 2005 when I was on the team when the field was originally renovated. And that project started, I believe, June 15th, and did impact the first 4 or 5 weeks of the fall sports, despite it being a much smaller project. I mean, there's really no good answer, and there's no way to accelerate the scope of this project beyond what we've tried to do. And would I like it to start June 30th and be done September 1st? Absolutely. I just don't see how it's possible to make that work.
Anybody else?
No, I'm saying not impact anybody, but it's not possible.
Is anybody else from the board want to say anything? Charles, do you want to call for a vote?
No, actually, I want to speak. I just, I'm very proud of the students that were here. I just, I have 2 children that, go to school. The fact that everyone got up, that they spoke, that I know there were some people that were nervous. I could tell, but, everything was heartfelt. I listened to everything everyone said. And one of the things that, Amy brought up is that there's no easy decision here. It's not an easy decision. It's something that, you can look at everything that's before you, and 1 second you could think one way, another second you think another way. There's going to be an impact. There is going to be an impact. We heard what everyone was saying. We heard it. We did not vote at the last meeting. We got back. We extended the time. We took into consideration also whether people be or not spring break, as far as numbers, everything else. somebody bringing up the point as far as, well, you don't have a plan. Well, there's not a detailed bullet point plan, but the plan there is as far as going to Union, whether it's going to Scotch Plains, the number of buses that are meeting, who's gonna be bused, and it's spoken with the coaches as well as the principal who's here and the athletic director. So these things have been discussed, they have been mentioned. And again, it's you know, one of the things I bring up is that it's the sense of community. That there's gonna be a decision that's gonna be made that not everybody's gonna be happy with, but as a community, we support each other, we get behind each other, and we move forward. And again, there's no easy decision here. There is no easy decision. It's something that I know we've all wrestled with, I know we've all discussed. We've broken it back down and we've looked at it. And again, if anything to me that's came out, I'm proud of our students. I feel good, whether good, bad, or indifferent of anybody view the decision of the education that we're providing for our students that are here, that the fact that they've gotten up here, that they've expressed their opinion, that they've come together. And that's what I'm gonna take out of this.
Charles, you want to call for a vote?
Dana?
Lynn Benner.
Yes.
Kent Diamond.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Robert Garrison.
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg.
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Charles Ostroff.
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
You're welcome to stay, you don't have to. We're going to move forward with the meeting.
Charles. 6 to 8. Want to abstain?
I have to abstain.
You
Are
just
we up?
voted.
No, I thought we did it all, we didn't.
We did it all.
Well, Dana, I just want to reflect the fact that I'm abstaining for items 6 and 8.
So
I
Charles
thought-
changed his vote to
Yes.
abstain from
6 and
6
Just
and 8.
6 and 8.
I got it.
Understood.
Thank you.
I thought we were only specifically
Yeah,
doing
no,
the
we
one, and then we
moved
were
it
gonna,
all.
I thought we were doing one, and then we're gonna do. No, I called the motion for, I thought we were calling the motion for the specific other.
All right, we're going to move forward. We just have a couple of items left on the agenda. Thank you. Technology. Peggy.
No report. Our last meeting was before our last general board member meeting. We were meeting again on October 26th, so we'll have a report on the 30th meeting.
I'd ask the board to note the notes for the record. Do we have any unfinished business? Any new business? Any liaison reports? Yeah, Rob. Oh, sorry.
No, please, Lynn.
Lynn, I didn't see you, sorry.
I did go to the special ed meeting with the parents, and it was extremely informative. It was well attended. It was just about over 2 hours long, and all the parents had a chance to speak, ask questions. All of the questions I felt were thoroughly answered, and I do know about a lot of what they were talking about, and they explained it very, very well. So I thought it was a very good, informative meeting.
That's great. They're a great resource to our parents and our families. Thank you. Rob.
The Wilson PTO met, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I can't remember now, it seems like time just sort of melts together. But it was a great meeting, kickoff meeting for the new school year. There were some happy and upset parents about class parents, but I thought it was a great meeting, and Mr. Malango always does a great job giving all information for the upcoming year and really giving the parents as much information with things that are changing, whether it's some of the technology and some of the security issues, and so I do wanted to acknowledge Mr. Malango for that.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports?
Quick plug?
Yeah.
Sorry, went to the first PTC meeting on a Wednesday. Hello. It was a lot like the ones when they had them on a Thursday. And they're really informative. There's a lot of stuff discussed. So if anybody has time and wants to come, 10:15 Wednesday, October 17th in this very room. So
Great. There's nobody left to recognize for questions or comments, so I would make a motion that I'd ask the board to approve the following resolution, that we move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law on harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brendan. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are in private session at 10:14.